anybody show up in the waiting room that I didn't know who they were. No, Zoom is not the Wild West in the way I had hoped for.
Did anybody
Jody,
see
are
the
you
movie?
invisible today?
Well, that's what I've been trying to figure out. My computer's a little locked up. My computer's been away from me all of spring break. So I was trying out DAZ 3D right before I got on just to like get a feel for it and everything. And
Okay.
I think somehow it's like appropriated my camera and I don't know, even though it's
Dance
closed, how
3D
to get it back.
shouldn't have anything to do with your camera, but we'll.
It wasn't DAZ, sorry, it was the
Animes. Yes,
animes.
animes will
Yes.
have eaten your camera.
Yeah.
Definitely, because
I
animes uses your camera to. Yeah, no, there's no.
and I closed it and it's supposedly gone. So I may have to leave and come back again. I don't know
Yeah,
what it
that's not a
exactly is
bad
doing.
idea.
Okay.
Maybe I'll try and see if I can get out of it too.
I don't know.
We're all leaving.
Catherine. I think that's pretty good.
I like the alien.
Stranger danger, stranger danger. I was assuming that was a COVID that Catherine.
That's what it looks like to me.
Had come
Oh, maybe
as
it is. Maybe it
some kind
is.
of
Oh, gee, that
COVID
kind of
thing.
spoils it. I was hoping it was just a friendly alien. Well, to me, it is. It's a friendly alien.
Okay, yeah.
Not
Everyone
a
else will
virus.
see COVID, but you will see a friendly alien.
I do.
Okay, so Holly, yeah, do whatever you need to, Holly. But we got to see your cat with the beer cans, and that is a very Holly Sparkman avatar. All right, so let's see here. There we go. Now it's just you and me, Les. We can talk. Oh, Jody's back. We can talk between us as though no one were listening because, frankly, no one is.
So I'm just going to ignore these other cameras that I'm seeing up here.
Yeah, and don't worry about them. They're not paying any attention. They're all so.
I'm used to that. I'm your friend.
Yeah. Well, it's dope is legal here in Illinois now, and so it means that graduate students are always high as fuck. So there's not really, so really it is just you and me. And to be frank, I'm stoned off my ass too. So,
Welcome.
okay. So, folks, this is Les Owen, and Les is he is an accomplished musician, but in his second professional incarnation, he is a cinematographer, and he is a documentary maker, and just generally a filmmaker. He does narrative film as well. And we can talk to him about film and stuff like that. But primarily, what Les is here to do today is to talk to you about Zoom and your streaming appearance, right? And what you can do, because I know, you were taught Mrs. McGillicuddy in ninth grade, and she's a very sweet lady, and she told you that appearances don't matter and that, you were beautiful inside. She's wrong. I mean, that's the problem with Mrs. McGillicuddy is that almost everything she says is the opposite of true. And of course, appearances do matter. And you're going to spend a lot of your lives as people on Zoom or Zoom equivalents. You're going to apply for jobs, interview for jobs this way. You're going to defend your thesis this way. You're going to, if you're going to give readings this way, if your career goes the way that you hope it will. And so how you appear on Zoom is not nothing. And, but we treat it as though it were, right? And we've been on Zoom now at a place like SIU for about 2 years, and literally no one around me has upped their Zoom game at all. And in fact, most of them are still confused by the buttons. They're like, well, I don't really know how to, you know what I mean? Oh, my audio. And it's like watching my parents try to use an iPad to talk to their grandchildren, and it's sad. And we need to step up and go, okay, we're going to appear. How do we want to appear? And I'm not suggesting to you, and those of you who know me at all know that I'm not suggesting to you that you must look conventional or that there's some ideal to which I'm guiding you. The only ideal of your appearance on Zoom is your ideal of your appearance, in my opinion, right? That said, presumably, and where is Ismail up? Is Ismail's video up? Ismail, you turn on your camera, please. I'm always very
Yeah,
excited
I'm here.
about Ismail. Can you turn on your camera?
So, sorry, my internet is really, really bad. Oh,
Okay. Okay. It's too bad because
hello?
Ismail always broadcasts to us from his cell at the county lockup. And I mean, it's all, badly painted cinder block and things like that. And, I mean, that may be the way you want to appear. But what Les is going to do is help us with principles of photography, videography, lighting, camera placement, camera. Okay, well, I'm sorry. But again, like that's one of the things we have to consider, right? Is like, what's up with your internet? And what are you going to do when you find out your internet is shitty 5 minutes before your yeah, okay. Yeah. Well, no, as long as you got something good in trade for your internet, Ismail, that's, you know, but so right, but like these are considerations we didn't have 2.5 years ago, but that we do have now, right? Is what are you going to do if your internet screws up 5 minutes before you have to go on, some really famous book show? Yeah, Catherine, you should be able to. Is there a file drop down on the upper left hand side? I'm not looking at animes right now, so I don't remember the interface, but there should be a way.
Duh. I have no idea. Let's see here. There's a bunch of icons, and when I click on them, nothing happens.
Okay.
No, wait. No, I guess things are happening. They're just happening kind of slowly.
You're
Okay,
gonna
yeah, I
remain
mean-
whatever that is.
Yeah. I don't know. Well, never mind. You guys can. I hate for you guys to like waste your
Okay,
time.
well, just kind of hang in there, do what you can,
Yeah.
and pray for Ismail's internet.
Yeah.
Right, but it's an interesting question, and it's a question that, for instance, the university did not come to grips with. When we were forced to leave campus and go online, the university gave no thought to what was the resources that were available to people off campus. Now, on campus, I gather internet is reasonably good, but not great. It's pretty good in Feiner. I've never had bandwidth problems in Feiner. But you need to be able to sustain a very steady HD signal, right? So 1920 pixels by 1080 pixels, along with sound. And we'll talk a little bit about sound too, and microphones and stuff like that. I'm just using my StreamCam microphone now, but it's not a great microphone. And we'll talk about good but reasonably inexpensive microphones that will up your game and stuff like that. So anyway, that's the question we're going to be talking about for the next half hour or so. Is how do you present yourself, and what do you want to present yourself as, and how can you maximize what's available to you, and how can you plan around the things that you might have a problem with, right? Because nobody doesn't know that they're not going to be on Zoom now. So if you haven't figured out how to be on Zoom, right, then the question comes up like, how good are you at doing pretty much anything, right? That you know that you're going to have to do. Okay, so Les, thank you for joining us. I know your time is valuable. That you are paid untold millions of dollars for your advice on this sort of thing. I am going to duck out of the spotlight and leave you on the spotlight. But when you want to see anybody's video, you tell me, and I will bring them into the spotlight, and you can critique their appearance. This is sort of like one of those modeling shows or shows where you make clothes or whatever. There used to be a Twitter, was it a Twitter account called Rate My Room? Has anyone ever seen Rate My Room? It was really big at the beginning of COVID. People would take images of folks who were like on television and stuff being interviewed from their homes and analyze and rate what was behind them. Which is silly, but we all do it, right? I mean, we're very visual, and what we see indicates reality to us. For instance, you will be shocked to know I'm not actually in a haunted forest at the moment.
I was going to say the lighting is pretty good there in that haunted forest.
Yeah, I think my fill light's a little hot.
You're going to blame the light.
What do you think? Well, I mean, it's because I mean, it's in part because I have a chrome sphere for a head. It makes the lighting a little hard because I bounce a lot of light off of my skull. But I think I'm cut out reasonably well from my background. You've told me about lighting, and everything you told me. Now and my camera is in a bad place right now. Again, I'll blame the camera because I can tell, and I have a hard time disciplining myself to look at the camera. But right now, it looks like I'm looking at you, right, Les?
Right.
And that's way better than this.
Yes.
But I find it very hard to discipline myself to do that.
It's impossible. It goes against our nature.
Yeah.
We're looking at the faces of the people we're talking about. We're not looking at a camera. We don't have that sitting in front of us. So you have to make that.
I try to put the camera and zoom in a place where where I can sort of see them. But one of the things I like about animes, for instance, and other avatar programs is they will keep your eyes focused, your animated eyes focused on the camera even when you're looking elsewhere. So that with an avatar, you're always looking at the camera. And avatars now, NVIDIA, the video card company, is working on a thing that will make an avatar of your actual face, and it will use very small bandwidth because it will only right now, right? I'm broadcasting at 30 frames per second, or maybe even 60. But it'll only broadcast what changes about your face, and it will use AI to keep your eyes fixed on the camera no matter where you're looking. In reality, and I've seen tests of that, and it's pretty cool because it's an avatar, but it just looks like you. But it seems to be paying attention even when you're not paying attention at all.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so how shall we start this adventure in lighting and camera work, Les?
Well, let me introduce myself again. They've probably forgotten by now, Pinckney.
Yeah, well, I did go on for a while, but I know the effect you have on an audience, and I wanted to put that off as long as
feel free to jump in and wake them up every now and then.
Yeah.
Hi guys, again, my name is Les Owen. I'm in Bowie, Maryland, and we're going to talk a little bit about lighting. I generally don't consider myself an authority at any level about Zoom or even computer cameras, but I do know something about how you kind of want a picture to look, especially everybody's looking into cameras. So all I have on right now are my ceiling lights, and compared to yours, I look a little towards red, don't I? Are you seeing the same thing I am? Whereas most of you look a little more natural. Well, that's just because of the nature of the lights that I have in this room. Now I'm going to turn on my desk light, and that's a little hot. So I don't want that either. But I do have a light here on top of my computer, if it turns on, which gives a little more natural color to it. And I can also adjust it down. Should be able to dim it a little bit. Not enough. Okay, my arms were reflecting the light in a way that made it a little hotter. So that's a little more natural. From what I can tell, everybody's got pretty good cameras. I mean, you've all got high def cameras. Your backgrounds, my background's pretty cluttered. I got a bunch of video gear behind me here. This is my studio, so I came in from a shoot earlier. I just dropped the stuff right there. And I generally don't do, I don't know about you, I don't do any kind of formal meetings. It's all pretty casual. If I were in a business environment and I was having a business meeting, then I might use a background or move stuff out of the way, try to look a little more professional, you know, and I think that just rule of thumb, just try to look professional. I've got my computer. Generally, I have my computer right here when I'm working on it, right? But that's a terrible shot. I'm cutting off my head. So I'll have to tilt the computer back. It's probably a good idea not to cut off the top of your head. And where you see my eyes is about 2/3 up. It's probably a good position. These are, generally speaking, I think, for example, in this classroom, we're not going to be judging one another, I don't think, about these things. But when you turn your camera on for someone new that you're meeting for the first time, you know, you want to be able to generally look in their direction at the camera, and you might want to be centered. Depends on what's going on in your room. But you don't have to, you know, I can come over here. It's just, that's kind of like, again, unless you're trying to create an effect for some reason, you generally are going to be centered on the shot. Unless you're making a documentary or some dramatic moment in a film, your subject is going to be in the center of the camera. And you don't want to be too far back because that's kind of weird. And you don't want to be too close because that's even weirder. So everybody seems to have a sort of a natural feel from what I can see. Matthew Gordon, hello. You've got a lot of headroom in your shot. You might want to tilt the camera down or move your body in a way, because a lot of that balance that we have in the room, for example, I might not want to tilt the camera down. I might have a pile of laundry sitting right here, right? So I might just move my body in a way. But generally speaking, you don't want to be too low in the shot, and you don't want to be, and again, Matt, if you've got your camera clearly is not on your computer, it's sitting to the side there, right? If you're going to be in a meeting with other people and you're going to be talking to them, try to be able to be looking into the camera as opposed to the side like that. Is that your, got it. Okay, cool. Boy, and your audio is fantastic. What are you using?
Show us your mic.
I have the exact same microphone. I'm not using it for this, but I use it for voiceovers and whatnot. Yeah, that's a great mic. Great mic.
See, there are perks to working in the lab, aren't there, Matt?
Yeah. And I noticed several of you are wearing headsets. What is the advantage to you to wearing the headsets in a meeting like this? What drives you to do that? I'll start with Bryce.
Yeah. For me, I have a problem of like my audio feeding back. In part because I think my voice is kind of boomy a lot of the time. So yeah, it just comes through, I think, a little bit cleaner if I have my like headphones kind of cutting everything else off.
And what kind of mic do you have? Because you sound good.
Oh, this is just my internal mic on my computer.
Okay. How does my mic sound to you guys? Normal?
It's a little thin.
It's a little tinny.
A little
Yeah,
hissy.
Thin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, yep, yep.
There's not.
Okay, 'cause
There's
I'm
not
just
much
using
low
it.
end to it.
I'm just using a computer mic. I haven't set up a special mic. I don't do Zoom meetings often enough for me to have set all that stuff up.
Yeah,
But you can buy
Les
light.
uses his rotary phone. He's a, what's
I've
your phone
always-
number, Les? He goes,
I've
"It's
always been partial-
549.
I've always been partial to that feel, parking it right there.
He's got one of those phones that hangs on the wall and you yell into the little megaphone shaped thing.
Jody, what kind of light are you using?
This is just an overhead ceiling fan in my living room. It'll probably fade out a little bit. There's a decent amount of natural light in this space right now since we've gone to daylight savings.
Right.
And like usually by this time it's fading into dark and I look like I'm in a cave a little bit. Alexis is laughing because she often has mood lighting. I often use a headset as well. And I was going to say something about that. Like for me, it's a shared space. So I often just to kind of stay more and focused on school. It's nice to have a headset and a more like focused sound as opposed to just broadcasting to,
Sure.
everybody in the house hearing.
Right. You guys, are any of you using a light on your computer for your Zoom calls? All right. Hold on for a second here. Get this unplugged. I am using this. Okay, it's one of those little cube lights. You've probably seen them advertised. They're really effective. They don't throw very far, meaning I couldn't use this across the room, you see, but in this proximity on the computer, it's pretty effective, and I can make it a lot brighter. I do use them for like for a hair light on some shots, back behind my head. I'll set one of these little things up, and that's very helpful too. There's tons of.
Can you talk about when you talk about hair light? Can you talk about like a standard, lighting setup with a with a key and a fill and a rim?
Yep. What he just described was 3-point lighting, and you're going to have 2 lights to the front or to the side that you will adjust depending upon how you want your subject to look, how you want your shadows to move or to be seen. It's a lot more attractive to not just have a light in front of somebody like you see in the news, like any news broadcast when they've got the guy on the street and they've got a camera. They have to light that so that it can be visible for the camera. But it's generally not preferred to have that on a set shot when you can have the time to set up creative lighting. I really like Alexis. Your lighting is fantastic. You've got it coming from one side. You've got one slightly dark side, which gives you some depth to your shot. I really like that. That's an attractive look. So whatever you did there, is that just natural light coming in your place?
So I have a window and then it gets darker. So I actually have kind of 2 candles on either side of me, and I like try to lean into like the lack of light. I have green string lights in the distance, which I don't really think show up, but I like them. So
You're using
Alexis
candlelight?
really does.
yeah, I have 2.
But are they really impacting your lighting on your face, you think?
When it gets dark, yes. Right now, probably not.
Okay. All right. So what we're seeing is natural light that's coming in a window.
Yep.
I use that all the time for shooting interviews. If I can get a room gives me natural light, I often don't even set up a light. It depends on how dark I want that dark side to be. I might set up a light just to kind of fill it, because if it's just too much, it's not attractive. But what you've got is, I think, a very attractive look.
What about the Kubrickian void behind her, though?
I have a chair.
You know,
It just can't be seen.
we'll come back to that. We'll come back to backgrounds.
Okay.
Maggie, you, on the other hand, have a little bit too much darkness on one side, like the lower side of your face. You've got dark shadows right here that I would like, as I'm talking to you, as a subject on a camera, I would like to see a little more of the part that's shaded. So what kind of lighting are you using?
I have every light in my apartment turned on. So
Just your
So-
ambient light in the room. Okay.
Mhm.
Well, then I recommend to avoid any issues, if you're using ambient light that might not be balanced or create a shadow situation as in yours, is to get a light for your computer that you can have up front. Like you've seen those circular lights, you see them all the time.
And like you're saying, like a little LED, it looks like a little LED panel.
Well,
Les?
mine does, but the circular ones that you've seen are also very effective too. And you can change the color. You can make it warmer or cooler, make more, which you can do a better job of getting your skin color to match if you want to look natural. So that alone right there would really improve your camera image or your zoom image with just and you can get them for like $15 online. It's not like you've got to drop a lot of money to get one of these little lights. So, and they probably are popping up on your Facebook ads at some point. Well, maybe they don't for you, for me, because I'm always looking for gear, and they know what I'm looking at and what I'm looking
These
for.
young
So
people
I
are
see
not
that
on
stuff all the time.
Facebook, Les.
Like the camera that you can get that you can set in the middle of your screen, so nobody knows that you're not, you're looking, instead of looking at up here, and you're doing like looking right here, the camera's right in the middle of your screen, so it kind of takes care of all that business you were talking about earlier about not looking into the camera. Anyway, that's the sort of stuff I see on my Facebook. They know who they got there. Salam, did I pronounce that correct? Okay, great. Your lighting looks fine. I don't see really any issues there. Catherine, you definitely need a light of some sort, mainly because you've got such a strong light behind you, as well as a side light. I like the side light, but it's it's not enough on your face. So
she basically needs a key
Mhm.
in front of her, because
Yes.
so essentially the window serves as a
that helps.
the window serves as a hair light or a rim light, as us bald people like to call them.
Well, it would, but it's not. You're seeing the light source.
Okay.
And a
Oh,
hair
I see.
light,
Right.
you don't see the light source. You just see the results, which would be it's
Right.
going to be shining through some of the hair or lighting up the edge of the shoulder or something to set it out from the background. A good example right here, Holly. Your lighting is, I like your coloring, but I can see your ceiling light. Boy, you keep jumping around on me here. I can see your ceiling light. So yes, if you were to tilt your camera down or your computer down, that gets rid of that, and it also raises your head in the shot, which puts your eyeballs. People think, if you think about putting your eyes 2/3 of the way up in the shot, is probably the best positioning for that. Sometimes that will cut off the tops of people's heads, but generally speaking, that's a good place to be, with your eyes 2/3 of the way up. That would be the one thing I would suggest to Salam, is that your eyes are in the center of the shot. If they could, and we're sort of nitpicking there at this point, but push it up so that you're up in at least the top third quadrant there. Same for Alexis, you're right in the center of the camera. So you would want to tilt it down to raise you don't want too much headroom, space up above your head. It's kind of a waste. Matthew, same for you. We talked about that. Jody, all of you guys are sort of center mass. And I see a lot of people in meetings that will be in the center, or worse, they've got a lot of headroom, or they've cut off the top of the heads, and they're not really too concerned about it. Again, they're in a meeting. They're not thinking about their look necessarily. But it can become off-putting to a lot of people because they find themselves distracted by those sort of things. If you're moving around and suddenly half your head is gone. So you're looking good. So Bryce has kind of an artistic sort of to the side look there, but your head's in the right try of the shot. And now I'm going to take a shot at this. Déjeuner, is that correct?
Yes,
Wow.
déjeuner.
Okay. You have your camera, your lighting is great. Your camera's great. You have absolutely nothing in the background. You got a white wall, and with your dark skin and a dark t-shirt, that's a bit strident is the word I'll use. You're going to want to, you can make that more attractive or less distracting if you were to have some sort of a green screen backdrop, which I don't do a lot of that, but anything you could put in the background or change your background in some way if you can. Now here's a problem. I understand we're shooting these in our homes, and if we set it up to get the lighting right and we're using natural light, depending upon where we're sitting in that room, that forces us into whatever background is going to be there. So I get that.
Dejanay, have you ever used the backgrounds on Zoom? Because
Not yet.
okay, because let's walk you through that then, because given
Yeah,
how
good idea.
how uniform your background is there, my guess is their algorithms will do a pretty good job of background replacement for you. So if you look down on your Zoom screen, do you see the stop video button in the lower left-hand corner of the Zoom screen? Okay, so you see the little up arrow to the right of that, right of that? Click that up arrow, and everybody else can try this too if you haven't,
Mhm.
right? And then click choose virtual background. And you'll see, like I have a ton, like this SIU background. This is the background I use when I'm meeting with administrators and people that I want to prove that I'm not a traitor to the cause, which of course I am. And that kind of thing. But you see, there should be some pictures and videos.
Very nice, Jody. Northern Lights.
I'm surprised
there you
because
go.
I was thinking like what you were saying, Pinckney, that in the past when I've tried to put up a virtual background, it really was destroyed by anything in the background that I had, and I needed a blank background.
Right. It really depends on, because you see for Déjeuner, it actually works really well.
Yep. That's awesome.
The problem is you have to keep the top of your head from sort of touch. Yeah, because it does this weird thing where it sort of sprouts out of the top of your head. But yeah, and so you can pick any picture you want. See, there's Catherine's got one of the one of the official Zoom backgrounds. And is that the blur, Déjeuner? The yeah,
Yes,
because
this is the blur.
even that helps because it's not quite so, the background is not quite so declarative. But it's like I've got tons and tons of different backgrounds that I use depending on where I want to be. I've found loops. You can find images. The BBC actually has great images of all their old television sets. So like you all won't know who like Quatermass was or any of those people from the old BBC days, or like Doctor Who from the '60s and stuff like that. So so you can pick what you want behind you. Matt has got the Neophyte Studios background up behind him, and I'm using a green screen. Here, let me move so you can see. I'm using a green screen, so I'm just sitting in my office, and it's actually just a circular green screen that fits on the back of my chair, and it just moves with my chair. And so if I and I have a great big green screen in my office, I think I can show you that here. Yep. Oh, whoops. Yeah, there you go. That's my second webcam, which is sort of pointing at the big green screen in my office. So, and I can put whatever I want on that green screen really, really easily. Like that one. Okay, sorry, Les, but that just seemed to me like a good moment
No,
to
it's
maybe
perfect.
talk
Because
about
we were talking to Dejanay about the background, so that makes perfect sense. Um, yeah, I mean, this common sense stuff. Make sure that your background, if you're not going to use a green screen or one of these other virtual backgrounds, make sure your place looks, good, clean, organized, professional. I tell you, I've been in some meetings that were, for example, I'll give you an example. There's a group that screens a film that I made for organizations, and then they have Q&As afterwards, and there might be 20, 40 people that'll hang out for a Q&A afterwards. And it can be really frightening because a lot of people don't do this on a regular basis at all. And they don't even think about the fact that everybody can see into their home, everything that's behind them. And, some of these people have lots of stuff, and most of it's collected right next to them, apparently.
You're telling us that your audience is primarily made up of hoarders?
I was
Les, is
trying to
that
avoid that word because I don't know.
So yeah, so
We
people who
might
are
have,
interested in
we
speaking
may have
to
some
you
collectors in this group. I wasn't going to go
are
there.
often mentally ill. Okay,
Yeah.
no, good.
Yeah. So, and what's funny, I mean, funny in a weird way, is that these people know one another, but yet they probably have not seen into one another's homes. So here they are talking to people that they're familiar with, who suddenly realize, oh my God, that guy's a hoarder. I had no idea. So it will affect everything. I mean, it's hard to even think about what's being said next when you're looking into these situations like this. It's just kind of distracting. Again, it's probably the safest way to put it.
Well, it tells
Very
a
cool.
story, right?
What band is that, Jody?
What's that?
What band is that, Jody? Oh, I lost her.
Hold on. It's actually the band that I'm in. I was trying to see if I could like place myself. Like,
Oh, well, there you are.
so I was trying to see if I could kind of place myself with them in the background.
What kind of band?
They're called the Phonics.
The Phonics. What do you got? Are you a cover band or what?
It's covers soul, funk, R&B, Motown, that kind of stuff. So
Awesome.
yeah, it's not mine. They have personally been together for 50 years. I am just now their new female vocalist. So
Congrats. Good for you.
Thank
Very
you.
cool. Yeah, that's awesome. My favorite kind of band. I'm a sax player, so I've played in a lot of funk bands and jazz bands my whole career.
Come see us sometime.
Yeah, well, I'm afraid that was a former life. I met Pinckney because Pinckney represents a crossing of my two worlds because our mutual friend is a musician that I've known and worked with over the years. But when I met Pinckney, I wasn't doing that anymore. I've gone into the filmmaking phase.
We have also crossed worlds, Pinckney and I. So I understand completely.
Okay.
He's part of my tribe.
That's right. The first time I met Jody, we went to church together. But then you showed up and I sort of stopped going to that church. And so, but then
Me
you,
too.
Yeah. And so then you
We're
were
both
in my
heathens.
class. Yeah. And it was very confusing to me because I saw you and I felt like I ought to be praying or, somehow more devout than
I get that a
being.
lot.
Yeah.
I feel like I've just taken over. I'm sorry, Les.
Oh, no, that's okay. I think we've covered the important stuff. You can move your lighting. Actually, just now I noticed that Dejanay moved her light. You moved your light somehow just now. What did you do?
I lost natural light.
Oh, was it okay? Because it was a smooth change, and so now you are darker lighting wise than you were before. So primarily, or maybe exclusively, are you just using natural light?
until I turn on my overhead light. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, that actually points out another issue is that clouds pass by can affect your lighting. It can affect it dramatically. And if it's cloudy or whatnot, and you're dependent upon your ambient lights, that's another really good reason to have a solid light on your computer that's going to be consistent and give you a consistent image when you turn your camera on for others to see you. If that makes sense.
Yeah, our class is 3.5 hours long. So as you watch, we sometimes get darker and lighter, and then the lights come on, and like, we're,
Yeah. Yeah. And that can be a big issue when you're shooting interviews from my work, because what happens is when you dissect an interview, you take different subject matter and you might move it around to accommodate the storyline. And if the light has changed dramatically, and then suddenly you've got two ideas that you had to push together, to cut from one, and then you got to B-roll and you cut back to that, and it's like, so light, changing light, and if you're using ambient light, natural light coming into a room can affect your image. That's what I'm trying to say. All right, any questions? Pinckney, your lighting's really good.
Well, thank you.
I don't know if that's good or bad in this case, but
Well, that's the problem, right? Is high-res cameras and good lighting, and you actually end up looking like you actually, like you look. But yeah,
mine actually kind of sucks.
Yeah, I've got a pair of LED kind of projectors that
right
point at me, and so I've got a oh, there's my hand. I've got a key right there, but so not quite 45 degrees off, and then I've got a fill light over here on my right.
Yeah, and there are, I feel silly even saying these things because I know you guys know this. There are going to be scads of videos on YouTube that you can just look, 3-minute videos about how to set your Zoom lighting up or how to set your studio up with the microphones, lights, everything that we've talked about and more. But so, take advantage of that. I don't know how many degrees I would have had from the University of YouTube if I'd been keeping track all these years.
No, it's fantastic, isn't it? I mean, that you can teach yourself a whole profession.
That's what I've done.
To be honest, I don't even know why universities exist anymore. I mean,
I don't know how they're going to exist.
Yeah, it's just.
And why hasn't YouTube? Why haven't they figured out how to give out diplomas or degrees and charge people for a degree?
Well, because education, I mean,
you could apply for it.
Even Google probably couldn't break into the education cartel. I mean, because the only thing the education cartel has is accreditation, right? That's the only reason universities exist, because without
it's such a business.
So once again, it's the man.
It is the man. The man has got his boot on our neck, Les.
No, but I'm telling you, it seems to me that, I mean, if you had some sort of accreditation through YouTube that says, I have studied so many things having to do with this subject matter, that's as
well. And the thing is, I mean, of course, you can take pretty much every course at like MIT or Yale, right? You just, the only thing you can do is you can't get accreditation for it,
right?
And they elite institutions keep their prices or sort of their value artificially high by making the degree rarefied, right? That is, given contemporary technology, Yale could have 1 million students tomorrow.
Right.
But as far as they're concerned, that, instead of thinking of it as, that would be the dissemination of one of the best educations in the world, they think, well, that would devalue our product, which is a Yale diploma. Their product is not a Yale student. Their product is a Yale diploma, and their customer is the student. And that's a very backward, it's an insane way to look at education. I mean, and so, but these, in 10 years, institutions like this one will be offering primarily short-term certificates. is my guess, rather than full-fledged degrees.
Hmm.
Because I don't know. I mean, well, that's maybe another discussion than the how to light your Zoom video discussion. But I mean, it's critical, right? And again, our people. Let me bring up Matt. So Matt manages our among other things, manages our streaming. So our streaming out to Twitch, which is we're streaming out to Twitch right now live. All the Les Owen fans are piling up in the chat. Um, but and he manages our YouTube channel and things like that. And so we have a lot of stuff online. Like we have hours and hours and hours of talks and lectures and so forth online. So it's just knowing how to exist online, or how to present yourself online. And I mean, on Twitter, it's really important too. It's just not visual, right? And people act like idiots on Twitter. People act like no one can see them. And they destroy their lives, right? But we're going to be giving readings in this environment. These students are in the place they're going to be when their work is being presented and appreciated right now. Because the way to make it as a young artist now is streaming, YouTube, that sort of thing. That's how you're going to get a breakthrough, is prove that you can get an audience. And yet we give very little thought and no education at all in terms of, well, what is it like when you show up at a reading you're supposed to give and your mic is shitty, and everything's at a weird Dutch angle, and you know what I mean, and and everybody's looking behind you, and your cat's taking a shit on your bed, and right, I mean, so it's just it's weird. It's like, produce these wonderful things you want to present to people, but have no idea how to do it, unless, for instance, you've been teaching me a great deal about interviewing, right? Because the project that Les and I are working on together, one of the actually many projects that we're working on together now, but the primary one, the one that pays.
This is the one that doesn't involve the bear costume.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh my God. Well, I'll tell you about that project. You talk about a streaming success. We had somebody who wanted VR footage, 180-degree stereoscopic footage of all of the largest and most dangerous animals in North America. And I told Les, I was like, this guy's loaded. Just give me a number. Like, because with 180 stereoscopic, you have to get pretty close. So I'm like, Les,
I'm the one that made that point.
Yes, no, you were. And I took it to heart, and I've had many hilarious visions since.
Okay. Interviews.
Yeah. What?
You said interviews. You were about to say something about interviews.
Well, you've been teaching me how to interview, right? And it's funny because we think we do things well because we've seen them a lot, right? And and I'm an older guy. I'm pretty experienced, and I tend to think, okay, I'm doing this just fine, and you'll stop me and point out an error I'm making, or a way that I need to hold myself or express myself, or pauses I need to take so that you can edit the material and stuff like that, right? And it's not criticism or what I mean. It's like advice or something, and we try to think like, oh, well, that doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like, who cares about that? Only trivial people. Well, guess what? The world's full of trivial people. I mean, like, you're in a classroom full of trivial people right now, right? I mean, people really are going to care how you sound and how you look, and do you look like you give a shit? And again, I'm not arguing for a kind of generic look. In fact, I'm very much opposed to. And where's Kevin?
Kevin!
Yeah, my God, well, I can't believe we're doing, like idiosyncratic looks. Kevin usually comes to class in some variety of full face makeup. Um, kabuki
Are you
or
serious?
yeah,
And
geisha
angsty lighting.
clown. What's that?
And angsty lighting.
Yes, very angsty lighting. But I mean, watching Kevin on Zoom is like watching a movie Kevin would make, right? And Kevin does a really good job of not being idiosyncratic, but the way he looks and the way he presents himself shows that he prepares himself, right? He takes his appearance seriously while not trying to appear other than as he is or other than as his work is. So I just think it's funny that we don't spend any time on this stuff, despite the fact that all of us already spend so much of our time in this environment. And new environments are coming, but they're not going to be like less artificial than this one, right? They may be improvements in some ways. So
I
okay,
think,
well,
I think
I'm
it's
sorry,
just a matter of everybody just take some time in the near future and figure out how you want it to look. And then
well,
just
that's what they're going to do right now,
duplicate that.
Les. Is they
Well,
what I'm gonna,
I've got another meeting in about 4 minutes.
no, tell them no.
I can't, I can't
need
reach them
you.
until the meeting.
I need you.
Yeah.
No, that's fine. That's cool. Like, don't worry.
Well, I thought you said
I'm kind of
6:50.
used to you walking around the
Did I
middle.
misunderstand?
What? No, you're fine. This is exactly what I told you. I was just about to start say I've kept you longer than I promised I would. So I'm gonna let you go. But what everybody's gonna do now is they're gonna take a few minutes. So students and go take the next 15. Let's meet back at 6:20 our time, 7:20 Les's time, and I want you to have arranged your visual space so that it represents what you, not like, oh, I'm just showing up at class in my PJs and my bunny rabbit outfit, or whatever, but like you're going to be doing a reading. And Jody, that's fine. Like I like that. You got kind of a Slim Shady thing. But come back the way you would go to a reading, right? A reading of your work. Yeah, you're on a panel of like 5 people, and so you're going to be small for 80% of the reading and big for 20% of the reading. And I want you to reflect. I want you to use the lighting, camera, all the things we just talked about to show us, to give us a thematic experience visually of what your work will be orally, right?
To make a point, this is really bright, but I think, and the color sucks, but I'm making my point here. You, a darker background, boy, God damn, that looks really good. I'm kidding. I didn't have a moment to set that up. A darker background is better because it pulls you into the focus of whatever they're looking at. If your background is too bright, it just kind of washes everything out. So if you can, what I was attempting to do there was turn off my ceiling lights and give myself a dark background, but I hadn't balanced my other lights to accommodate that. So, well, for example, Holly's looks pretty nice. You stand out in the shot, as well as Alexis, and Salam is pretty good, but you got the bed coming out of your ears, or whatever that piece of furniture is. Those are the things. The white wall causes that to look like it's like a spear going through your head. So these are the things. You look at your background, you look at your shot. You want your pretty faces just to be just the first thing, and nobody can even think about looking at anything else in your shot. Then they will listen to everything you say at that point.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
And remember that you're in 2 dimensions, right? So something behind you actually kind of looks like it really is coming out of your head.
Yeah.
It's why you don't ever sit in front of like, a pair of horns or, or
stand in
whatever.
front
Like,
of the
and it just
Washington
looks weird
Monument.
if you have a tree growing out of your head. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So
Okay,
remember
guys.
to use that two-dimensionality. Okay, bye, Les.
Very nice meeting you.
Thank you very much. We really
Good luck with
appreciate your
everything.
help.
Talk to you soon, Pink.
Talk to you, man.
Bye.
All right, so take the next, 20 minutes or so and rearrange things, right? It may take an effort. You may have to drag furniture around. Find, if you have clothes, dark clothes that you can drape over things,
I
that
have
sort
to
of thing.
change clothes.
Well, no, you don't have to, but I mean, do you want to succeed? I mean, probably not. So yeah, just failure is an option. That is our that is the SIU motto. Failure is an option. And so feel free to ignore everything that has been said and to just trust to your own taste. It's worked for you so far.
I mean, duh.
Right. No, and but just think about what is it that you want people to imagine about you, because this is storytelling, right? This is storytelling. What for instance, Holly, how do you choose when you're in front of a green screen, right, doing your Twitch stream? How do you choose your appearance? What do you think about?
Well, with the backgrounds, I tried to pick something that was relevant to the person I was speaking to. So I would try to just have a blank background, except for one thing that represented that person that I was speaking to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good. So very sort of minimalist, right? No
Yeah.
one is distracted by anything in your background, right? Yeah, it makes a lot. It makes a lot of sense. Okay, and if you need a particular image, what I'm going to do while I'm here is I'm going to boot up Storyblocks, which is a stock photo, stock video, stock sound service, and I'm going to be looking through backgrounds and stuff like that, and I'll throw some of them into the chat so that you can download those files if you want to. But if you have a specific request, I will try to find the background that you want. If you're going to project, you absolutely could create a persona. Be thinking about that. But if you want to project a background, it has to be like Dejanay, right? Like you have to have a very plain background behind you. Unless you have a green screen, that's really the only way you can do it. Okay. All right, so very good, and bring a piece with you. Bring a short reading. Bring a couple of paragraphs, because I want to try to get everybody. But really think about the whole thing that you're presenting. You're not just on the page, right? And think about how you're going to read. How do you read without blocking your face? How do you read, right, and still make contact with the audience? So I want you to start thinking about audience and appearance and sort of the gestalt of what you're doing rather than just the words of what you're doing. Okay? All right, very good. See you back here in a little bit. or is that going to be? I mean, like, are we going to be together for that? Well, until the next
I
meeting.
think it's going to be over Zoom, and Holly took the initiative on this and reached out to them to get it hosted on Neophyte, and it sounds like we might be doing that.
I followed that. I just didn't know if we were going to have a camera on people in a theater or if it was going to be on Zoom. Does anybody know?
Maggie says it's on Zoom.
Maggie says it's on Zoom? Well, clearly, if Maggie says it's on Zoom, it must be on Zoom.
Must be.
So, I mean, for one thing, I want you to notice how quickly, perhaps some of you have not, but how quickly you've accommodated to the idea that the person leading this seminar, in theory, is a silver mask on a silver background, right? Like that's not, you don't think of this as, presumably, right? If you, like most people, it's not like, oh, that is an avatar representing our faculty member, right? We move to that very, very quickly. We are, we're brilliant at abstraction, right? And at making the abstraction the thing. Yeah, and I mean, you're good at that because presumably you all drive cars or ride bikes, right? And you don't, the machine just becomes your body when you do that. You don't think, oh, my left turn is coming up, therefore I must reach out with my left hand and press down on the stalk that comes out of the steering column so that my left signal goes on. I have observed that the left signal is going on. Now I must take my right foot off of the accelerator. I mean, by the time you do that, you're dead, right? We are very quick at understanding and adopting abstraction in a way that I think as writers we fall into the trap of literality. Well, anyway, so these are, we have the tools to begin to enter into Gesamtkunstwerk, right? And I'm actually going to put that word in the chat because I think it is worth your all's having available. Yeah, and it's just applicable, but we tend to think of one dimension of our presentation, and I just want you to all be able to start thinking in more than one dimension. Yeah, and you probably do already, but the Academy and Literary Society, right? Like you would probably be embarrassed, or maybe you wouldn't. I don't know. Kevin wouldn't to appear as a weird talking mask in front of a, metal honeycomb grid, right? It seems weird to you to declare yourselves. You live in what is to an observer, from, the 70s, which I suppose I am, or the 80s. You live in a very circumscribed world in terms of the behavior you're willing to accept and the behavior, not really you, but the stuff that people will brand you as peculiar for. And I know that seems strange because your theoretical philosophy is that you live in a very sort of liberated world, but I can guarantee you that in many ways it is not. And so it seems to me and of course there are many things that are superior now as well. I don't claim that as a virtue necessarily. It's just the state of play, right? That you all are more your generation, and again, you may be exceptions to this. You're more embarrassed than any generation I've ever met, right? I mean, it seems a shame because you're not doing anything to be embarrassed about that I can see, right? I mean, but you work so hard to avoid embarrassment that you often make yourselves less interesting than I think you could be. There's a kind of fear of being interesting because if you attract attention, you can get walloped, right? So I suppose what I'm suggesting is that, um, like courage is a choice and bravery is a choice and simply not giving a shit is a choice. And they're all absolutely necessary choices if you want to be artists, right? And again, I don't mean artist to, in academia or in arts programs, we use artist as this elevated term somehow. And I don't use artist any differently from the way I would use the word plumber or, HVAC repair person or whatever profession you want to think of. And some of us just are artists and some of us aren't. And you can train yourself to be a better artist than you are. But it involves thinking along to become a worthwhile artist involves thinking along many dimensions, right? And not all of those dimensions allow you to be self-effacing. Yeah. I mean, we have this idea of the modernist artist, right? The Annie Proulx or whoever who, or the Alice Munro who writes the story, in which nothing happens, but everything happens. And, those, who would never be caught dead, using a computer or admitting to use a phone or whatever, right? And that's a weird ideal. And it's not practical and it's not possible and it's not actually how those people live anyway, right? I mean, just understand anybody who gives you an image of how they are is manipulating that image. And really great storytellers are really telling you a good story about who they are, but it's only a story, right? And so one of the things you're going to have to do, one of the fictions you're going to have to write, okay, as a fiction writer, one of the fictions you're going to have to write is the fiction of who you are as a writer, okay? And it doesn't have to be a lie, although there's nothing wrong with lies. I mean, I make sure that, and Holly may be interested to hear this, but I make sure that in every interview I give, I tell at least one whopping lie. Just one thing that the least amount of research could prove is utterly untrue and is in fact impossible. I will say that I was at an event that I could not possibly have been at. I will give some detail from my early life that could not possibly be true. And it's astonishing. I've literally never been called out for these lies. I used to I was a commentator on, right, exactly. I mean, I was a commentator on an NPR show called All Things Considered, and probably All Things Considered. And what they wanted from me, this was at a time when I was living in West Virginia, and what they wanted from me were short essays about life in West Virginia, and I did a very similar thing for a sort of hip magazine that didn't last very long called Wigwag, and I did letters from home, and I would write a letter about what it was like to live in West Virginia, and which was really exotic, right? Like to people in New York, it was just so strange, and living among normal Americans, can you imagine? And not being in academia and stuff like that. So, and what I found out was that whenever I wrote a true story, they just weren't that interested in it. But when I made up some obvious bullshit, I mean, I got to the point where I wrote an essay for an NPR nonfiction program where I wrestled a bear. Now, at a bar for $50. Now, that did not happen. Nothing like it ever happened. Nothing even close to it ever happened. But I mean, boy, they loved it, and we got calls. I'm trying to remember what all I wrote about. I mean, but it was some really fictional bullshit. Anyway, off the subject a little bit, except to say that if you imagine you are going to be the the writer who writes and represents your work, that doesn't seem to me realistic, right? That it's not what most people do. In fact, there's a really terrific essay by Joyce Carol Oates, who was my teacher for many years and has been a friend for, well, almost 40 years now, I guess. But you know, and it's called, I think it's called Anonymous or Anonymous Writer, in which she talks about the act of making up Joyce Carol Oates, right? That she is to herself Joyce Smith, well, or was at that time. She was married to Ray Smith, but she made up a Joyce Carol Oates who could be a phenomenally prolific and successful writer who could do her own PR, right? And who could not be shy, because Joyce is a very retiring sort of person. And so you're going to need to think about what that is, right? And you're going to need to make that story up, and it will be either, you know, more or less like your own autobiography, but feel free to lie. Like, it's what we do. And when, you know, remember, you know, when you go to these readings at Little Grassy, right? And you're like, okay, so what's your writing routine? And they go, well, I get up at 5 in the morning, and you know, I listen to some, you know, I listen to, you know, a little bit of Rachmaninoff, you know, and I run for 3 miles, and then I come back and write for 6 hours. Like, it's horseshit. It's bullshit. They don't do that. They wish they did that. They might do that for a day or two. It might be their desire to do that, but nobody does that, right? Like, I mean, who here knows what Murakami's day is like? What does Murakami say his day is like? Do you know?
He's the runner, right? He's the one who wrote
Correct.
What I Think About When I'm Thinking About Running or something like that.
Yeah, and he's I mean, he's a marathon
Mm-hmm.
runner. I mean, so clearly he does some of what he says. But if you read his description of his day, he's either a psychopath, right, or he's lying. And my guess is, you know, you know, and it's fairly natural to us, right? Like, you're trying to make something up that's interesting. And I know you all have very complicated ideas, most of you, about what it is you're trying to do and what it is you're trying to communicate. But first and foremost, you have to be interesting, right? You have to provide something that people are not providing for themselves and that others are not providing. Okay? Before you achieve any other effect of your work, I mean, beauty or moral purity or, you know, instruction or depravity, whatever it is you think you want to achieve, you have to get people to look at and then turn the page. Okay? So that's all this is about. Like, I don't care if you use animes. You know, I don't even really care that much if you use good lighting or, you know, or what have you. I just want you to be sure you're making something interesting and bold, right? Something, you know, something that is idiosyncratic to you, something that is unique to you. And that will be, you know, how you appear and, you know, how you do these sorts of things and the choices you make. You know, and for instance, I mean, like, I'm very sorry Kevin's not here, because I'd like to talk to Kevin about how he chooses, you know, what he will appear like. Now, you probably just think, oh, that's just Kevin, right? But that's a Kevin that Kevin makes up, whether he's aware of it or not. Many people, many artists actually just do this subconsciously, right? I would suggest to you that it's better as a conscious construct, but one that you come to accept very quickly in the way that you accept that this weird mask is talking to you, right? Like, you'll get used to it very quickly. And it's so nice not to have to write your own work, right? You just let that crazy asshole write your work. Yeah, you know, when you're just sitting there and you're like, oh man, that's kind of nasty. You just go, oh, well, I'll just let the asshole do that. Right. And the asshole does all the work right. And it's really kind of great. Because so often, right, we think, oh, how am I going to, forge in the smithy of my soul the uncreated conscience of my race, right? Well, you're not going to. That was horseshit. Pretty much everything writers say about what they're doing and why they do it and how they do it is horseshit. It's a story, right? And why you would imagine, you're writers yourselves, right? You lie all the time. I mean, maybe you don't, but if you don't, you'd be a really unusual writer, right? And if you don't, you should get in the habit of lying all the time, and of not attaching any particular great virtue to the truth. Yeah, because you don't know the truth. And if you did, you have nothing to tell me about the truth, right? What are you going to tell me? I've lived a lot more than all of you combined. So I mean, I'm so old. Anyway, the point is that right, there is a kind of earnestness to most of what MFA writers do and create, right? There's this kind of like desire for virtue or something like that. And I will simply tell you that in my experience, earnestness is the death of art. Right? That kind of like, well, you know what I mean by earnestness, and you see it in people around you all the time. And it's one of the things that drives me nuts about academia is everyone's so earnest. Everyone in meetings is trying to represent how earnest and serious they are and how hard they work and how committed they are to the project at hand. And I don't give a rat's ass mostly. And I think you probably don't either, right? Like you pretend to give a rat's ass because everybody around you seems to give a rat's ass. Well, they're all just, as soon as you understand they're all lying, right? They're all writing a fiction and you understand you're better at it, you win. Like you'll write a much better fiction than they will. Much more interesting. You'll get hired for jobs. Yeah, no, that's probably a lot of it, Jody. Okay, so let's go through and I want you to do your short reading, do a short presentation as the fictional person you now are, and then just a couple of minutes to give us an idea, and then I want you to tell us how you made the choices you made. What did you change if you changed anything? Bryce didn't, for instance. Bryce is totally satisfied just to be Bryce. Like just showing up and being Bryce is apparently fine. Or maybe you did change things and I'm just not noticing. So let's just start and go through this really quick and then tell us what you changed and why. Why did you make the choices that you made, right? And again, choices are all you have as an artist. All you're doing as a fiction writer is making decisions. Oh no, dude, you absolutely should have been in your bathtub. I mean, even just because Kevin is not here, you should have been in your bathtub and just said, "This is an homage to Kevin."
I really tried it because it's just like a blank wall. It like just looked like I was against like this wall or something. It did not come through.
Okay,
I'll try again next week.
But good. I'm so glad you tried that, right? Like how happy would you be if you went to Little Grassy next week and instead of everybody sincerely, and earnestly sitting, in front of, whatever landscape they think is beautiful or whatever, somebody was just in their fucking bathtub, right? Like we would talk about that reading for years. Yeah. I mean, people still talk about the reading. Maybe you've heard about it, but a student here, Tawny Leach, when she gave her thesis reading at the gala, at the end of it, and it was really scary and weird and pseudo pornographic. And at the end of it, she had a bunch of undergraduates. Well, she had two undergraduates, both of whom ended up in our graduate program, come out. It was in Shryock, which is this, has this big organ in it. She hired an organist to start playing this really scary organ music. The doors at the back of the room burst open. Two big undergraduates in disguise came in, put a black bag over her head, and dragged her out. And it was, it was phenomenal. Like I heard about nothing else because she was my student, and she had told me she was going to do this, and I had said absolutely, and made some suggestions. And the best part was she was the first person to read, so she left, and then she and all her undergraduate friends just went out drinking. They didn't have to sit through the rest of the bullshit gala. So, like, it's a really good strategy, and it is literally the most memorable gala reading that has ever been given here, and it was Gesamtkunstwerk, right? It was this consideration of the whole, and Tawny was not thought by many people here to be a good artist, and she was clearly one of the best artists in the group, but she was not earnest at all, and nor did she give a shit what anybody thought of her, which was kind of beautiful. Okay, so here we go.
Are we describing first or reading?
Well, read first and then describe.
Okay.
Read first and then tell us why you are Jody in the library.
I awaken in the darkness to the sound of screaming. The year is 2155. I am an orphan. The Benedict home for the criminally insane is the only home I have ever known. But it's not me who is troubled. This is where I was left. There was nowhere else to go, so I stayed. I pull the pillow around my ears as another scream pierces the air. Benedict home houses over 500 individuals with varying levels of psychotic, homicidal, and delusional conditions. The caretakers claim there was an epidemic level of cases once. People started to come off the shrooms. In late fall of the year 2100, the humans feeding humans resistance finally succeeded in overpowering the droids who controlled all the sustenance. It had all started with Dr. Benedict and his world-changing scientific discovery. He found a way to genetically modify mushrooms to provide all the nutrients the human population needed. In all of his research with rats, he never encountered the mind-altering effects of the mushrooms that only became apparent once the human trials began. And then we move on to a letter that is found in his old laboratory. Just 1 second. Give me just a moment. I have now lost my place in my work, which is so typical of everyone when you need to have it in a Zoom conversation. Father, the only time I see you anymore is during the tests. My breathing may be easier, but my heart is heavier than it has ever been. At each dose, the numbness I've been warning about grows, but you tell me that it doesn't matter, so long as my vitals are improving, right? Wow. I think that's the angriest I've been in months. Father, I don't trust this. You must stop. I'm healed, please. Stop listening to them before something happens that you can't take back. I know that you think your tests have been successful, but I'm begging you to please halt your research. Most of the time, I don't even feel like myself anymore. A little more of me slips away every day. The only emotion I feel anymore is fear, and soon I'm afraid that that will be gone too. You don't have to listen to them anymore. I'm cured. You can stop this. Bobby. A letter from Bobby to his father, Dr. Benedict.
Okay, so why did you make the changes you made, and what changes did you make? How did you reach those decisions?
Number one, this is actually our real bookshelf. We're this obsessed with books. And many people have told me in the past, like, that could be a virtual background. And even though it ends up being busy, it still has that feeling of professionalism. And there's still a differentiation, I think, in this space because the lighting is pretty good, because the light's just right overhead. I have a performance background, so the first things I think of with a new persona are hair and makeup, colors that react well in light, and setting and things like that. So I knew that this color would read similar to my hair color, which complement each other, and my
Good.
lipstick could do that. And that with glasses as a general rule on stage, in most settings, your glasses are going to complicate the picture that you present. So I made sure and changed into contacts, and yeah, I just
Brian,
and picked a complementary color to my skin.
can you try blurring your background?
Yes, just 1 second. I always get disoriented in where everything is when I'm featured. Just a second.
That's how it blurs? Huh.
Yeah, so
That's not
it's
good.
not more helpful, I don't think.
No, that's not good. No, it's good. I'm interested in being able to see the titles and stuff like that. And I was trying to decide whether, I wanted to see the titles or not. But no, that just turns it into a kind of psychedelic.
Weird movie background sort of thing or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
Like a movie theater or something.
But it's good that you don't have like Mein Kampf, right behind you or
I mean, we are historians, so we actually do have a copy just for, historical reference. But yes, I made sure that the titles in the background were mostly appropriate to any audience.
right. Good. Okay. Very good. Thank you. Let's. That's weird. Okay. Very good, Bryce. That's excellent. I'm really glad you did that. Yeah, having the shampoo and stuff makes it work.
All right, hello panel. I am Dejanay Robinson, and today I'll be reading some poetry. I started writing poetry back in 2013, and I created a memoir called Craze Individuality.
Yeah, that's the problem with the background like that. Is that if you hold something up, it just it gets very weird.
Right, gotta time it right. So the poem I'm reading today is called I Am You. Hey there, black girl. How are you? How was your day? I see you with the kink in your hair. That fro looks amazing. I'll always see you when you're overlooked. I'll always love you when you feel empty. I'll hold you up when you're tired from holding up the world. I'll be the spark to your fuse. You're beautiful. Did you know that? You'll always have a space in my heart. When the world tries to swallow you up, I'll come in, arms swinging. Your feelings are valid. It doesn't make you bitter. It's okay to cry. Don't worry. I'll wipe your tears. Those teardrops don't make you weak. Breathe. When you try to drift away from reality, I'll snatch you back. Whenever you feel like you're all alone in the world, grab my hand. If you ever feel like you don't have any more love to give, I have enough love for the both of us. My love is everlasting because I am you. Thank you.
Great, thanks. You did a really good job of moving between the text and looking at the camera. And when you looked up, you were clearly looking at the camera. And that's a really good effect because looking at the camera is eye contact with the entire audience, which is really terrific. So how did you choose how you wanted to present yourself? Like what changes did you make, and how did you reach those decisions?
Okay, so I enjoyed my black sweatshirt and my hair tie. for like going out purposes for this class, for this Twitch stream. But since I'm reading for a panel, I figured I should put on a business casual shirt, which is a floral shirt that I chose. And I chose a solid head wrap. I put on earrings, but you can't really see them, so I probably would change the earrings so that it could pop. I made the choice because, like I said, it's for a panel, and I just chose a background that was cool. It's a
Good.
lavender field.
No, it is. The colors are really pretty, and that the brighter colors are up top, and then you've got something fairly solid, kind of right up to your eye level, and your eyes are right on the where the sort of cloud line gives way to the brighter sky, or maybe those are mountains. I guess those are mountains. So, but no, that's a really good arrangement. I think those are good decisions. So, okay.
Alrighty. Yep. All right, so this was part of a longer piece because I tend to work a little more long form. So we're going to see if it stops in a natural place, but Oh, also, hi Twitch, I'm Alexis. Usually I'm encased in darkness, but I think it's daylight savings that like got me. We'll talk about them more in a minute. So, the first thing Tess felt was the dryness of her tongue, mouth forced open by how hard her cheek was pressed to the hardwood floor. The second feeling struck when she slouched away into bipedalism, shoulder blades protesting the movement with a cacophony as though her spine was just a series of misplaced glow sticks. Her thoughts lay not in her head but behind her sternum, and when she straightened upright, their pressure the inverse movement of baby doll eyes. She stood for a wavering moment before sitting on the edge of her mattress, which she had likely been on at some point in the night, blankets still coalesced around where she had once been. A Rothko print hung above her headboard, a permanent exclamation point haloing her form. At least, it did when she was properly prone. She wiped her hands down her face, tear ducts to dimples. Her phone sat on the edge of her nightstand. The screen projector cracked at every corner like the spiderweb seams meeting in almost a diamond, almost a frame. She nudged the home button, wincing slightly at its brightness. 7 p.m. 4 hours then. She tapped her password in, immediately confronting Notes app rambles, a series of typos menacing the eyes. Black waters, blue reflections, maybe burgundy. What's in, though? Hands? But opacity? She closed the app, not needing to reawaken any spiraling. No notifications on social media, at least none that she hadn't already been actively ignoring. Peering listlessly into her columns of email, she recognized names but chose to forgo comprehending messages that addressed her as Teresa or Miss, seeing nothing human. She felt the gentle nudge of her cat, a big orange fellow named Bert, who had evidently curled up on her bed, waking only to headbutt her for affection. She obliged him, chipped black fingernails scratching the crest of his skull, his tawny eyes squinting shut, tail flickering. "Well, I'm glad you slept well," she informed him, the beast purring in response. Her stomach, also going to be included, made its presence known with a grumble. "Right," she told it, adjusting the rolled-up ankle of her joggers, which had yet to be jogged in during the 3 paint-stained years she owned them, to actually allow circulation. The tightness remained in her chest, though her head felt like a watermelon her 5th-grade class had put hundreds of rubber bands around, one short of explosion. She looked to the vine plant in her nightstand, whose edges were browning. "Kill me," she told it, though it seemed like she was more likely to kill it first. Nonetheless, she stood, taking in the state of the place. She didn't let herself paint in her room anymore, or else she'd have paint on every outfit she owned rather than just most of them, but that didn't stop the desk and floor from being covered in scattered pencils. Books on everyone from Artemisia Gentileschi to Jean-Michel Basquiat to Ai Weiwei sat upon a collapsing IKEA shelf across from her. Last week, she had edged a pilfered collection of Bauhaus onto it, and she could have sworn the structure begged for mercy. A round mirror hung above it, frameless, forcing her to confront the reality of her whole being. The dryness of winter had changed her naturally wavy bob to something more lank, making her look like the guitarist of every acid rock band from 1968. It hadn't been her intended look, but she found a persistent sort of love for it. A few months back, she caught a trio of gray hairs along her crown, and though she elected to think they would better her life, as perhaps once she grayed she wouldn't have to bleach so heavily, the fact of the matter remained that they were there, and that was hard to cope with. She didn't mind aging, and she knew she was supposed to be better than beauty standards, evolved beyond their reach, calcified in gender studies classes and matured past her deeply studied adolescent internalized misogyny. Yet it was one thing to decide she'd be fine, another to be it. Would her hair fall out next, receding to the peninsula her father had? Surely not. Surely she had a while yet. Surely she had time to abuse it further. She scraped it all back into a ponytail, though the sliding of the hair tie against her knuckles sent a puff of maroon paint cracking off like dandruff into her hair, her shoulders, and the back of her shirt. She made eye contact with one of her many taped-up sketches, one of the walls covered in removable tape. Ezra had raised his eyebrows in a way that suggested she looked like she was solving or perhaps plotting a murder. When pressed, he claimed he liked it. She had too, though not when the pieces stared back. There was enough fighting to get out of her. She didn't need anything trying to get back in. We're calling it there. So again, yeah, I'm deprived in my darkness, so I'm trying to make it work. My candles, one's more visible. I have a plague doctor because I needed something in that corner. I kind of miss not being in the corner. It's also kind of put the poster in a weird angle, so now it's a hat. But I wanted to kind of have something. I have no table, so I have an ottoman with two briefcases stacked upon it. One candle, this fella, and then like a little plant that's in a monster.
Yeah, particularly like that you got the candle in the shot. No, it's good. It's because it moves, right? I mean, and it sort of, because one of the things you want is you don't want people to think your video has frozen. You know, if you go still for a moment or something like that, and so the candle will always assure us, no matter what you or anything else in the shot is doing, the candle will assure us that your video is still live. Yeah, no, very good. Although I really do associate the darkness with you.
I miss it.
Yeah,
I have curtains, but they don't actually go up, and the blinds aren't helping me. We have to move class later.
Yeah, no, we have to figure that out, because I really do think that's your milieu.
Yes.
You know, although I would like a candle in the background in addition to light on your face.
Yeah, they're always here. They're just usually kind of on the floor.
But you do a good job with theatricality. I think you could be even more theatrical in your reading. You could push the theatricality harder. Because you're already kind of a theatrical personality. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's that's again not an insult, nor really is it a compliment. It's just a description. But that's a virtue. Like, there's a reason people like to watch actors do things, right? Is because they do them in interesting and exaggerated ways. Okay.
Hey. All right, I'm gonna read just a really short section. Does my audio sound okay? It sounds really
no,
boomy.
it actually sounds good.
Nice.
You're getting a lot of good reverb out of that bathroom.
The natural bathroom reverb, yeah. Cool. Your ex-boyfriend, Seth, works at Chiba Bar on Kiowa. Only a few months ago, you would drop by after work a couple nights a week, and he'd lean over the bar, all business, and ask the usual, and you would look coy and respond, shaken, not stirred, and Seth would pour you a glass of whatever he was drinking that night. The cocktails all have cyberpunk names. The Razor Girl, the Neuromancer. Your favorite features lychee fruit with some combination of liquors. You'd lean back on your bar stool, half watching him, half watching one of several screens playing anime or Kurosawa films. Sometimes Beth from marketing would come by, and the two of you would ask Seth to turn off the subtitles and invent dialogue together. In the dark neon of the bar, Tetsuo the Iron Man could be a romantic comedy, a family drama, a political thriller. You've built new routines now. Your office is on Weber, 3 blocks east of Chiba, and you park in the lot by the high school, adding a half mile to your commute so Seth won't see your car. He leaves you voicemails laden with apologies, but you hold your ground. You unfollow Beth and avoid the marketing department.
Good.
Yeah, there's a candle in the corner.
Yep, candle, and then you've got the lighter there. Yeah. So how did you choose to stage this?
Yeah, I mean, so I tried kind of there is a sink dripping. Yeah, it drips day and night, and it drives me bonkers.
It's actually kind of good. I mean, you had this kind of rhythm track.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, you know, so many of my stories involve like sad stoners. And there's something about getting stoned
What
alone in
that
the
would be.
bathtub
Hmm.
that yeah, I don't know. It just kind of felt right for the stuff I've been writing about recently, and I kind of like that it's you know, it's like a little bit grimy, but also like not too bad in here. I kind of like the shampoo bottles. Um but then lighting wise it was actually really easy to make it like really clear in here.
Good. That's great. I think it's a good choice of environment. And because if you gave a reading like that, like at the MFA gala or something, people would go, "What the fuck was Bryce doing in the bathroom? Like, what does he think that's, you know, so special? You know what I mean? Like, they would snipe about it, which means that they wish they had thought of it and wish they had done it and wish they had the guts to do it. Right? Whenever people are like, you know, why did he think that was a good idea? Literally, well, literally, who knows? Not literally, I suppose, but they are simply saying, "Wow, I wish I were more interesting than I am." Right? Whenever people say you should have done that in a blander way, right? They're not. I mean, they're not giving you good advice, right? They're trying to lessen the burden on them to actually be interesting, right? So just always remember that. And when you hear yourself sniping in that same way, because you all do, right? You know, oh, who did she think she is? All you're saying is, I am so fucking jealous right now that I can't stand myself. And I really wish I had done something much, much cooler, right? That's it. I mean, it really is that simple. Like, you think, well, it can't be that simple. It is that simple. Like, that's all that is. That impulse toward, you know, gatekeeping and keeping people, you know, making sure that people aren't taking chances. Yeah, well, it makes it easier on people who are scared to take chances. And like the fact that we think, you know, doing a Zoom from a bathtub is like a big chance to take, that just tells you how conservative this whole business is, right? Like that's nothing. I mean, you know, I mean, it's cool. Like, I like it. I think it was a great choice given sort of a limited, you know, amount of time and a limited number of spaces you could go. That's a great idea. It's like, you know, okay, I'm just going to be in the bathtub. But I mean, I'd like it even better if the bathtub were full of water. You know what I mean? I guess maybe that's hard on your laptop. Um, you know, but yeah, I mean, you could be naked. I mean,
I
that
thought
would be
about it. I
fine.
considered it.
I mean, it's so crazy that we're all like, oh, that would be so weird. Like, Bryce has a body. Oh my God. I just thought Bryce was a brain in a jar. Like, it would actually be weirder if you were a brain in a jar. Yeah. I mean, exactly. Do whatever you want, right? I mean, it's because Kevin is always going to be weirder than you, right? So we can always go, well, it wasn't as weird as Kevin. Yeah, but this stuff's just not that weird. Like, or it doesn't seem that weird to me. Like my I mean, my life has been some parts of my life have been such a nightmare. All of this is just like, you got to be kidding. This is funny. Like, just be funny. What's wrong with being funny? Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you, Bryce. I appreciate that.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello. Let's see.
Hello.
Can you hear me? Hello.
Hello.
Anyway, yeah, I was running around trying to find something decent in my apartment and I couldn't. So anyway, I finally decided to just do my desk, and I took some stacks of books that I have around and put them on my desk to provide some visual interest. And then I thought of reading something that was inspired by my mom. So I took a bunch of books that I took from her shelf when she died, and I stacked them up there too. So that's the only hidden meaning that I have. Or not so hidden. Wait, was I
it doesn't
supposed to
need
say
be
that
hidden,
now? Can you hear me?
yeah. Hello. Don't expect your audience to cooperate with you or to be able to manipulate their technology. When you give Zoom readings, lots and lots of people will have extremely weird shit going on in the background. And you'll go, could that person please mute their mic? And everybody who is actually present will mute their mic. And the person with the dog going berserk will not mute their mic. Just
Have you
be
guys ever
aware,
been to a
just be aware. Like if your audience will not cooperate with you, nor do you have any right to expect that they will.
Yeah, I was
And your
just
technology won't participate.
Yep.
I
Absolutely.
was just wondering if anyone had ever seen a heckler at a poetry reading.
No,
Well, I
can I
mean,
sign up to do that?
I've been I've been at
You
many
could.
readings where I would have loved to be a heckler, but I'm probably going to wait till I retire, and then I'm gonna
Maybe
go.
not at SIU itself.
Yeah, I mean that's more like a. I mean, I've had people walk out on readings very publicly. Like Amy Hempel once walked out of a reading of mine and took a whole bunch of people with her. Ron Hansen, and I'm trying to remember. Yeah, I was reading a story about dog fighting, and she
Oh.
apparently is really upset about dogs. And
Hmm.
Ron Hansen actually wanted to fight me after the reading because I think he wanted to sleep with Amy Hempel, and so he was trying to impress her.
It would have been a great thing to live stream the fight.
Fake cowboy. Yeah, it would not have lasted long.
How much of that did you make up, Pinckney?
No.
Thank
why
you.
would you ask that? Why would I make
I-
anything up?
I have no idea.
Mm.
All right. I guess I'll read something.
Please do.
It's a flash fiction, I guess.
This is
In the
great.
elevator.
If you have a short time to read, flash fiction is a brilliant choice.
We'll see
And
how
no
it
one will
goes.
ever criticize you for reading short.
Yeah.
Right? If you have 5 minutes to read and you read 7 minutes, you're an asshole.
Yeah.
If you have 5 minutes to read and you read 3 minutes, you're a hero.
I'll see what I can do. Okay. In the elevator. You're the only person I can tell this story, Eileen told Carol, raising her voice a little. The bar was almost empty, but the Adams Wabash L train was going through. They sat down in Gully's single half-sized two-person booth, which was the only really clean one in the place. I feel like I saw my mom today. I'm listening, said Carol, in her usual voice, which sounded like it needed oil. Eileen was long past noticing Carol's voice, but today the world was fresh scrubbed, unfamiliar, like Eileen was once again a toddler or baby. It was first thing this morning. I just walked through the lobby of my building into my elevator bank. Usually there's 10, 15 people there at 7:55. Today, no one. Eileen turned to the waiter, Merle, who'd been waiting, pencil at the ready, though he never seemed to write anything down. T&T with lime, please, a wedge. Merle knew Eileen like Tanqueray. She and Carol met at Gully's at 6 o'clock every other business day and had one drink apiece. Sprite, said Carol. This was her lunch break. She worked the swing shift as a custodial supervisor. She brown bagged it because Merle didn't complain, but usually she ordered root beer. Maybe today she sensed she needed something clarifying. So I get on the express, Eileen continued. I'm on autopilot, returning email. We've got concerns on pricing adequacy for products in the rural Southeast. People down there are dying earlier than expected. Carol made a circling motion to indicate Eileen should get to the point. I press 68. I'm in the right front corner. The doors close and I'm still... Eileen stabbed her finger at her palm, miming email eradication. The elevator picks up speed, but then I hear this furtive sniffle, like a crying sniffle. It didn't sound like a cold, the flu. Eileen squeezed her wedge into her drink. She couldn't understand how she knew what type sniffle it was. I glance up. In the elevator doors, they're metal, shiny. I see this woman on the left behind me, against the back wall of the elevator. You said no one was waiting for the elevator, said Carol. Yeah, said Eileen. Her neck hairs had prickled up against her collar. Maybe she missed her floor, said Carol, got distracted by her phone. I didn't see a phone. Anyway, she's wearing this old-fashioned white nurse's uniform. The dress, the white cap, like a costume, but authentic, really crisp, pristine, more like an actress than some cheesy Halloween thing. For one thing, it's September, but an actress? I mean, it's an insurance building in downtown Chicago. Insurance is not on every floor. Insurance, Carol said. She had trouble with pronouncing. Good point. She was mid-late 20s. The woman's eyelashes had seemed to graze her knuckles, which crushed a Kleenex to her face. As Eileen stared at the woman's reflection, she looked up. She put her hand, her Kleenex, to her side. She had a generous mouth. Her face was diamond-shaped, framed by carefully curled sandy auburn hair. Then I realized, Eileen continued, she looks just like my mom. Because your mom was a nurse? Well, yeah, Mom wore a uniform like that back in the day, but it wasn't just that, it was her face. Carol considered. She was in her 20s, you said. She looked like your mom in pictures? Exactly. People thought there was something wrong with Carol. Eileen knew. Something about her speech, her difficulty walking, and her thinking, which was literal, fact-based. When Eileen and Carol first met, way back in middle school, Mom said Carol was an idiot savant, but Eileen liked Carol's way of thinking. I've racked my brain all day, Eileen said. I don't have actual image memories of Mom's face from when I was a kid, like at a birthday party or whatever. When it comes to young Mom, said Eileen, making air quotes, snapshots are all I really have. Not many either. Mom had destroyed most of her old photos. She told Eileen that her young adulthood was not a happy time. To me, Mom's wrinkled, bent, with gnarly hands and swollen ankles. Did the nurse look like that picture in your office? Asked Carol. Yeah. After Eileen's mom died, Eileen's brother's wife, a thoughtful woman, dug up a snapshot of pale, unlined young Mom, framed it, and gave it to Eileen. Eileen put it on her desk at work. Mom had never felt obliged to smile for pictures. Her mouth looked impatient, her brow a little creased. Maybe she was concerned that Dad, who no doubt took the picture, posing her by unimpressive public flowers, would make her late for work. And he did a half-assed job. A dumpster peeked out from behind her. Eileen and Mom had had a mixed relationship, but Eileen felt protective of the young Mom in the picture, now that she saw her every day. Young Mom was so much younger than herself. Carol, she said. She went to take a deep breath, but just got a shallow one. The woman in the elevator, she was my mom from the picture. Eileen had longed with her whole body to embrace young Mom in the elevator, tell her not to be so sad. Carol looked concerned, but she never talked with her mouth full. She chewed and swallowed her potato chips. Then she said, your mom took the L up here to go to night school in 55 and 56. Carol remembered anything anybody ever told her, or so it seemed to Eileen, who didn't. Anyway, Eileen continued, she was going to the observation deck. Only now I saw that big oblong button lit. I stepped toward her, but she ignores me. She walks forward, punches a button. The elevator slows down. I go to touch her arm. She looks at me like buzz off. But then she seems to realize I'm freaking out. Like palpitations you could see right through my shirt. She looks a little nicer. And then she says, you lost an earring. Mom had been observant, visual. At 83, the day before she died, at her own hand of a gunshot wound, she'd mentioned the wear on Eileen's loafers. The doors opened. She walked out. I tried to follow, but she holds up her hand just like a traffic cop. She says, this is not your floor. Then she looks away, Eileen continued, but doesn't leave. I realize, as soon as the elevator closes, she's going to call another, keep going up without me. They had low barriers up top. Eileen sipped her gin. But then she said, it came to me, something I could say. I said, if you had a daughter, you'd name her after Aunt Eileen, and she'd love you very much. Eileen and Carol stared into different parts of space. Finally, Carol blew her nose and folded up her hanky. Her far-sighted eyes, which always looked too large behind her glasses, fastened onto Eileen's face. That got her attention, Carol said. Eileen's mind unclenched a little bit. Apparently, she said. The L was starting its crescendo. There was something comforting in its predictable racket. The thing is, Eileen muttered, I cheated her. I never do things properly. Carol frowned. You had less than a minute. Eileen looked into her glass. In 50 years, I couldn't manage it. She reached for the check, which Merle always left beside her elbow, but today he'd comped it. Wednesday, Eileen, said Carol. Her lunch was almost over. Eileen would have to run to catch her train. All right, that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I like your choice of background. I think that's a good choice.
Thank you.
Hello. I'm gonna read a section of the story I'm working on about a world where human bodies drastically change depending on the occupation or passion they choose to delve into within their lifetime. So I'm gonna read a little bit of that story. Oh, and I'm Salam. Okay. I step into our farmhouse, my frigid orange fingers struggling to carry in the last bucket of snacking peppers, and see Mom aggressively wiping down her beloved rocking chair. Hey, baby, she says, once hearing the bucket hit the floor. She turns to face me, her poppy seed speckled cheeks unusually plump, and I realize she'd been crying. My heart falters. Any news, I ask, recognizing the tears shed for her brother, my uncle. She stops scrubbing, the tips of her stone-stiff fingers looking more eroded and weathered away than ever before. He can't walk anymore, she says, an odd, capitulated smile on her face, her eyes staring blankly through mine. I'll be visiting him soon. I sense her approaching requests before she says a word. I'll come with you. I've always loved visiting Uncle Keaton's home. He's a little odd, scatterbrained, and doesn't take to many people. But he likes me. And I've always felt like that meant something, like Keaton liking me is proof that I'm not as unremarkably normal as I often feel. Or that at the very least, if I am normal, I'm remarkably so. He's changed since you last came with me, Mom says, as I struggle to parallel park in front of Keaton's apartment building. City living has its charms, but I'd suffocate. I'd inevitably fade away in the buzz, in the layered murmurs of broken subway announcements and faulty streetlights. But it fits Keaton tremendously, the constant noise, the forever movement, the musky air of smoke and beer-stained sidewalks. I just don't want you to be confused, or her voice trails off. I know, I'll be okay. The charm and excitement of visiting Keaton in the faraway land of Chicago is dulled by the tragedy of his circumstance. His passion was carpentry. He used to make some of the most extraordinary pieces of woodwork I'd ever seen. His fingers had become an array of carved wooden coils, his limbs a soft, polished cherry, his face whittled to sharp points. Unlike Dad, the wood forming his body had a distinct anthropogenic look to it, of being carefully crafted, of having a guaranteed splinter-free quality. Though his mind never seemed to stand still, always wandering, his art was elaborate and focused. We walk up to his small home, and my mom's scoured knuckles tap the door. We hear a series of hurried movements erupting, and soon a tall, flustered woman opens the door and greets us. Can I help you, she says, her skin a washed-out gray, IV tubes crawling out her scalp and hanging limply at the sides of her face. She looks exhausted. I assume she's the nurse Mom told me about. Yes, I'm Keaton's sister, and this is my daughter, Mary, Mom explains, waiting for the woman's acknowledgement. I called to confirm our visit a couple of days ago. The look of mild frustration strewn across the woman's face finally mellows, and she shakes her head as if clearing her thoughts. Yes, I'm sorry. Please come in. As soon as I step inside, the distinct smell of dewy mold makes my nose tingle. His house is just like I remember, cluttered and full of color, but the atmosphere is off. The liveliness of Keaton's voice welcoming us into his chaos is supplanted by a disruptive quiet. My nose starts to tingle again, but now with the warning of tears to come. He's been difficult, the woman says, the webbing of popped blue veins adorning her skin reminding me for a moment of the ivy vines that once cloaked Keaton's brick home. He knows that's what he's doing. He knows what he's doing is killing himself. He won't listen. I can't make him listen. I feel Mom's rough fingers squeeze around mine. The woman finally leads us to his bedroom. The smell of mold intensifies as she opens his door and beckons us inside. My throat tightens shut once I see his face. Marigold, he says, his voice raspy but happy to see me. The once smooth wood that made up his body is now cracked and unraveling, with bits of green crawling out from between the spaces and slowly assuming control of his skin. He's sitting on his rocking chair, one just like Mom's. Paige, I'm sure I've given you enough trouble today, he says to the nurse, waving his hands about, and I'd like some time alone with my family. Though hesitant, she obliges and steps out, closing the door behind her. I think you've given everyone enough trouble, Mom retaliates as she sets her bag down and approaches Keaton, a half smile on her face. He lets out a gurgling laugh in response and beckons for me to come closer to him. Your mom's a hoot, he says. I don't say anything. I don't know what to say. The smile on his face gradually settles. You're upset with me. I'm not, I say almost instantly, though I'm not sure if it's true. Well, I don't know what I am. You're killing yourself, aren't you? Mom releases a small gasp. Mary, that's a little true in some ways, Keaton says, and looks down at the hands on his lap, frayed and decaying with dry rot and the beginnings of fungi. I'd ask to hold your hands, but I'd leave you with 1,000 splinters. I think my carrot fingers can handle it, I say, kneel down and take his hands in mine. They feel damp and rough. So there's really no significant reason why I did this. I think I was trying to figure out something that I can do that, because I like to do a lot of things, and I was thinking about if I lived in that kind of world, like what would I look like, right? So I was like, and that's kind of a tough thing to answer because, I mean, realistically speaking, we all do so many things, right? That it's like, we'd probably just be like a mashed up version of, you know, all the things that we do. But yeah, I love planting and houseplants. And I figured really, I mean, it was just the easy choice because I have this good background for it and plants are easy to set up. That's really my only reason.
Yeah, no, but it may seem natural to you, right? But it was a really good choice, and to break up the right to not to just have a background behind you, but all now you're in 3 dimensions. There's stuff we can see, in front of you. Then there's you, right? So there's a foreground, you're in the middle ground, and then there's a background, and that's just visually really a really good idea, and you do a good job because none of it's like in your face and you're not like poking your eye out with the branches and stuff. But no, I think that was a terrific choice. It would be a good author photo. No, that's a very good point. We should talk about that sometime, right? Like what, because you all need to have a photo, right? You all need to have, you need to have websites, you need to have, and you need to, again, you need to be thinking about how you're going to represent yourself. Let me see if I can get a photographer who can talk to us a little bit about that stuff, and maybe we can even have a session where we take authors' photos.
Hello. All right. So I have a small chunk of the opening context for a second-person piece of interactive fiction that fits into a larger speculative world that I'm developing stories in. It's daybreak. To the north, the Ostrix mountain range grazes an awakening horizon with a chaotic upheaval of snow-capped stone. From this magnificent range, the city below derived its name. Glowing with a radiance to match the early dawn, the Ostrix skyline has developed a presence that rivals the titanic earthborn giants beyond. Constructed less than a century ago, Ostrix City was pitched to its original contractors, investors, and in no time at all, its 1 million settlers as a post-state ecological utopia. Growing up, that word was repeated ad nauseum. Settlers, you whisper, under your breath. You'd seen settlers in your time away. Families trying to stake a claim for themselves in the poisoned dirt of the Midwest, or magnet fishing in acidic waterfronts, looking for junk to trade out of scrap stalls dotting the Mississippi. Settlers didn't move into fully furnished homes, roll over at the heels of their employers, then bemoan taking a shit deal for generations, never encouraging their children to strive beyond the Ostrix city limits. So, thank you. So my background with Zoom does not mesh completely well. My camera is designed to be cropped and focused for OBS, where I can edit things. And typically in Zoom meetings, I will use OBS as a virtual camera to cut off my frame about here, bring down the headroom, as was mentioned earlier. I have to use two cameras so that I can run OBS and Zoom at the same time. So it's not perfect as I would like it to be, but I've set up my space to have kind of a flow to the back. You can't quite see it, but I've got my Twin Peaks and everything going all the way to the top of a very high ceiling. My PC in the back there and shifting lights. I promise it looks much better over OBS during a solo stream or something. And for those of you who were in class with me, like previously before I was streaming, I was using like a cropped camera perspective. Behind me, I've got a light and a plant, so as I'm moving, there's some depth and erratic to really accentuate the space, and the dim light back there adds some contrast between the two ring lights I have here as well. And overall, the room is actually really dim. I'm just being blasted with light.
Okay, good, thank you.
Hmm.
And being blasted with light, right? I mean, you want the light to be intense. Yeah, it takes a lot of light to look normal or good on video. And so, think about buying one of those little light panels. Think about buying bigger light panels, right? Like, there's nothing wrong with taking your lighting into consideration. Yeah. And I mean, Holly, I know you're used to working with a lot of light from the two big ring lights in the lab, right?
Okay, I am Holly Sparkman, and this is a section of a piece called The Stockyards. As soon as Kim was dressed and ready, Mike and I stepped back to admire the entirety of her look. Kim took this spatial separation as her cue to take off. She bolted, giggling. This was her chance to run and jump and enjoy herself. So Mike and I shared a glance, smiled, and took off after her. She bounded and dashed through openings between scrub trees and burr bushes, continuing despite fresh runs in her tights. I tumbled and bumbled after her, smitten and half drooling. "Wait," I panted, my pant legs covered in beggar ticks and flat trefoil burrs. Kim barely looked back, grinning. She'd always been short on words, but here they were useless. Her posture, the ease in her face, her gait said it all. She'd always said if she were to ever be reincarnated, she wanted to be brought back as a bird or a tree. This way she could be both, and Mike and I were happy just to watch her gorgeous body and her bespoke outfit run, fly, and be free in our forgotten little forest. Here, Kim could let herself go. We all could. Here, there were no pesky teenagers begging for freebies that wouldn't or really couldn't support our struggling business. Here, there were no angry churchgoers bothered by our policies of tolerance, eager enough to voice their opinions, but not enough to shell out to help us help those in need. Here, there were no irritated families misunderstanding our need to be together. We were alone together, playing in our own little playground. Kim leapt and vaulted, scurrying and scuttling over downed wooden giants, checking to make sure we were following, peeking around edges of mighty maples. The cool autumn air lay still around us as we wandered. The only sounds are mingled breaths and the crunch and click of dry leaves and trampled sticks underfoot.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. So how did you make your decision about your, yeah, Holly's a terrific writer. That's, well, I'm not telling people yay for your writing today because I'm thinking about other things, but you know, you're all good. Like that's not a problem. So how did you decide on your, not that you shouldn't tell each other, you're good. That's great. How did you decide on your background and how it's going to look and all that?
Well, I got a green screen for home that I hadn't tried out yet, so I'm trying it, and I'm getting like this weird kind of thing down here that I got to kind of figure out.
Yeah, it's
And
probably the light. You know, there's some kind of light leak there or something like that.
yeah, so I got to kind of mess with that a little bit. And I actually tried, this picture is a picture I took during the piece that I was talking about when we were actually doing that. So when you mentioned what I would do during the interviews, I figured, well, I'll do the same thing. I'll
Right.
just use her picture and as I'm describing what was happening. So I figured that would work, and I could try the new green screen and just kind of see how it all went together.
Good.
And I used something that's not a white background, but I'm still not sure about this sagey color because I still get kind of like this weird washout on my hair. So I got to figure out the lighting a little bit better.
Yep. No, that's the thing with a green screen is lighting is everything. And once you get the lighting right, it just, you know, it just comes together and works really well. But I really like that picture, and I like the geometrical arrangement and that you're almost entirely on the left side, but you cross over the boundary into the picture a little bit. That's just thematically really smart in terms of the material. And it seemed plain to me that I wondered if the picture had been taken of the incident you were describing, but even if it had not been, it clearly refers to it. So there's a really good, complete experience there. Yeah, good.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi guys, I'm Maggie. My internet has been really bad this night, so everyone fingers crossed that it doesn't quit. All right, this is about 4 paragraphs from my novel in progress, which is called Visitations. There's an etiquette to this, Agnes knows. She should be accepting sympathy, maybe listening to a few of the wild stories or recounting her own. She'd come up with a list, benign memories she could share without feeling guilty. Barbecues and fishing trips, bedtime stories, and horror stories, too. None of it really mattered or captured the truth of her life with Sebastian. It baffled her, the guilt. Why she would feel remorse for revealing anything true. Maybe because he was always so large, but with her in their home, he was just a father. Or maybe it was because he was home so rarely. Any time spent together seemed intimate and precious in her mind. It all glowed like molten glass, something too bright to pick up and examine, that would hurt to touch. He taught her how to pick locks. That was something she'd thought of sharing, but could never. It was all to make Georgie seethe, their daughter's hands capable of such mischief now. Agnes hadn't known that at the time. She crouched with Sebastian before their own door, holding the tools too tight, She was afraid they'd slip from her grip. Her knuckles were white around the pommel. It was more coaxing than lecturing. Sebastian's smooth voice guiding her through everything. It was like she already knew the motions, like she was born with the instinct inside her. All Sebastian had to do was convince her not to stop. There you are, Egg. Soft pressure. Soft pressure. Agnes tries to sit still and take in the conversation floating around her, deciding which one to insert herself into, but it's all too tangled. All she can hear is one long chant of her father's name, washing over her like the cascade of afternoon light. Right. And I cheated a little bit because this is like my streaming nook, so I already had this set up before.
Your what nook?
My streaming nook.
Oh, I thought you said your screaming nook.
Oh, that too, sometimes.
I was like, wow, that's pretty formal for a screaming nook. Okay, so you've already sort of thought about this and decided that this is your background for streaming.
Yeah, I mean, our apartment doesn't really offer itself to like big spaces of pure white background, so I had to do something back here.
It's good. No, it's really good. It's got dimension. I mean, you might think about a way unobtrusively to get something into the foreground, something that on either side of you is slightly in front of you and can sort of intersect in front of you so that we see it's in front of you. That's not a big deal, but I really like the depth. I like that the lights are behind the scrim, and that you've got an animal behind the scrim. I guess the llama's in front of it, behind the scrim too, isn't it? Can you bring the llama out in front of the scrim?
He's holding this up, kind of.
Oh, okay.
So.
All right. Okay. No. I don't want to see you die in a cascade of lumber or whatever, load bearing llama. Okay, great. Excellent. So now, hang on, let me get back to a regular view. So, what I want you to do for story time for next week is I want you to prepare another reading, whatever it is that you want to read, and I want you to use everything you've learned and played with, and experimented with this week to come in with a real Gesamtkunstwerk. Okay, um, come in and have everything for story time coordinated. Now, I don't mean in a logical way, right? I don't mean, oh, if your story is about a bathtub, or if you're in a bathtub, your story has to be about a bathtub. But make it, make your own world, right? And present yourself as you want to be in that world. Create who that won't make you go before the sun sets. That's just typical for vampires anyway. So I think that's fine, Alexis. But I'm just glad to have your look back. It's very reassuring, right? And just think about what else you want. Like, do you want animations? Do you want if you want to learn how to use OBS, you can talk to Matt. You can, if you want great cameras, you can, and good internet, you can come to the the lab. We can figure that out. I mean, let me know ahead of time because we'll have to figure out a way to get you in there. But I'll be on campus. So, and we've got a green screen there. We've got good lights there. We've got microphones there, and Holly can give you the lowdown on how to make that a turnkey operation. But I want you really to think about sound, think about how you pitch your voice. Not all of you, but some of you. I want you to practice during the coming week, reading and then looking up into the camera, because we really need that eye contact. right? And I want everybody to be very good and smooth, right? And I'm sure you know how you do that, but you read a whole sentence or you read it into your brain, and then when you're about halfway through the sentence, you look up and finish the sentence. And you have to get a really good sense of where you were on the page. This is not something that comes naturally. It really is something you have to practice. But you have to be able to put your eyes back on the space on the page where you were before. It becomes a real, like, geometrical quality to the writing. You start thinking about your writing in terms of where things are on the page, where you were on the page, when it's time to turn a page, and so on and so forth. But I want you to work on, and you can even just start timing yourself or have someone else time you. But I want you to work on getting up to, by next week, half of your time on the page and half of your time on the camera with with your eyeballs. Okay. The other thing is, does everybody know about having Zoom smooth out your appearance? Does everybody know about that setting? It's not, I mean, you're all so young. It's not, necessary, but but it's kind of a nice. I'm not suggesting anything, but as an older, wrinkled person, with skin problems, I like having it sort of smear Vaseline on the lens for me. Because you can always just do that too. Like that's the old movie trick, right? Is you just they put a little Vaseline on the lens and everybody looks wonderful. So that's story time for next week. Subject matter wide open, form wide open. But I want a I want a full on, like, this is a reading that you are all doing. You're all part of, it's a 10 or 11 person reading depending on who shows up. So think about that, right? Remember, you're going to be reading with maybe 10 other people, right? So what's going to work in that length? You do not want to be the person who at the end of a reading everybody goes, well, that was great, but X read really long, right? Like you don't want to be the person who reads longer than everybody else in a notable way, right? These are not artistic principles, but they are principles that will help your art not be, um, help your audience not be angry at you and the other people you read with, right? Because they'll fucking hate you. Yeah. So really figure out, okay, how do I do a nearly dozen person reading? What can I bring to that? How fast can I set up? How fast can I, do my work while seeming to be absolutely unhurried? Yeah. And then how do I get out again? And come in and understand you're going to have to introduce yourself. You're going to have to give your reading, and then you're going to have to exit. And you don't want to just end or go, well, that's all I got. Like, right? I mean, unless that's your sense of humor or something. But figure, what's your way in, what's your way out, and what's going to be going on, while you're reading. Okay. All right. So let's take a couple of minutes break, and then we'll come back at a little bit after 8. And I want to see what you were doing with simulators over the course of this past week. I want to see what simulators you played with over the break, and what you hope to take away from the simulator as you get deeper into it, or what you have already taken away from the simulator if you took a considerable amount of time with it over the break. Okay? Very good. See you all in a few minutes.
I'll never change my shirt. And yes, there was a memo. Y'all just missed it.
right? And not like, oh, I'm going to make this bad on purpose, but I have confidence in my vision. I trained for a long time, right? I started out with a considerable talent, right? I have trained that talent to a fare thee well. I've worked really, really hard. I've, and then you just have to have confidence that what you're doing is worth doing. Um, but it's we do a lot of praise, which again, that's fine. And I apologize for not telling people, oh, that reading was great, but I was concentrating on something else. But it's be aware. I mean, be aware, for instance, that literary readings in academia have no audience except for the people who are in the program and like their families and loved ones. There is that nobody in Carbondale wonders when the next literary reading at SIU is going to be. They wonder when the next Marvel movie is coming out or whatever, but I mean, you could not pay people in this town to come to our readings. And you can say, oh, well, Carbondale's just this shitty place. Carbondale's just like the world. The place that's not like the world is this campus, right? And so it's worth understanding. Like, you have to be pretty extraordinary to get an audience. I mean, a significant audience. You have to be way out of the parameters of normality. Because normal people don't gather an audience. There's no reason they should, or any reason they should expect that they would, right? And it's not like being smart gets you an audience. Yeah. Right. Well, no, but that's exactly correct. That's exactly correct. And then when somebody does, they'll go, holy shit, like that was really, that was, I mean, I'm going through this weird experience now where my first book, which was written when I was your all's age or younger, has just been republished in Spain. And so now
Congratulations.
oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that.
This is Town Smokes.
Yeah, Town Smokes, although it was renamed Baracco, which means boar. And it has a really cool cover of this giant pig, this really big, hairy pig with a saddle on it, and this really angry looking kid holding the reins of this pig. Because one of the stories in the book is about a big pig.
Who's the hog, right?
Yeah, booze. That's exactly right. But booze didn't make any sense as a title because nobody, like, do you translate that into borracho, or I don't know what the Spanish word for alcohol is, or or do you use the English word booze and then people, right? Or do you, right? And Town Smokes didn't make any sense. They couldn't figure out a way to translate that. So anyway, but I'm going through this experience of like actually having people remark on that book again, which is very strange. And you're like, oh, I could have done that a little differently. And seeing reviews and stuff like that of an older book is peculiar because we get very concentrated on the new stuff. But it's cool it's having a life again. And apparently, it's doing well enough. They're planning to bring out my other books, and I've had my books in. I've had a couple of books in Catalan, I guess, but I've never had a Spanish translation, so I'm pretty happy about that. Okay, simulators. Were you all like, oh shit, simulators? I was supposed to do that over vacation. Or were you like, oh, I'm so glad I spent that 16 hours playing Sophie's safe cracking simulator?
I have played my first game now.
Your first
Applause,
game?
please.
No, great. I'm thrilled.
I'm very bad at it. It was destructive of my ego, Pinckney.
Good for you, Dejanay. Yeah, no self-incrimination.
I spent the better part of a day trying to figure out a game that would be not like super, super hard, and that also would maybe be something I could have some vague interest in writing about. and that would relate to something I wanted to write about. And I ended up with Gas Station Simulator.
There you go. Very good. Gas Station Simulator.
Yeah.
Hugely popular.
Yeah, people
game.
liked it. I read the reviews. And the thing that eventually caused me to do it, it was between Gas Station Simulator and Prison Architect. The reason being that Prison Architect, I thought, would be the closest thing I could get to, well, like, I was trying to write that story about old people like being warehoused in storage facilities and whatnot, and I thought it would be sort of like that. But Gas Station or Prison Architect, when I read all the reviews, it seemed like it really would take a lot to get up to speed on that one.
Oh, it's a deep simulator. Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought, well, maybe I'll try doing it, but I'm not sure I want that to be my first game ever.
Yeah, it's a logistics simulator, using a prison as the metaphor for just solving logistics problems.
Yeah.
But yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I thought it would be good from a fictional perspective because it forces you to do all sorts of unpleasant things you wouldn't want to do. And in fiction, you want to have, obviously characters who do all sorts of unpleasant things that you wouldn't want to do, or at least that seems to be a good way to write fiction. But anyway, I decided to go with Gas Station Simulator. And when I watched the demos, I liked it because of the, I guess because of the graphics, the little story thing at the beginning where the guy's driving. I don't know if you guys have all watched it. Some of you probably have, driving down a desert highway. I spent a lot of time in the desert, living in Southern California, a lot of time camping in the desert. And it all just kind of made me feel nostalgic, and I liked it. And I liked the gas station, and I was like, I'd like to have a gas station in the desert that I could fix up. So I guess that's the secret of games. Anyway, but then I was immediately frustrated because the very first task I was so terrible at. And I'm just glad one of my daughters is staying with me and was able to tell me to use the W, A, S, and D keys to move around, or I still wouldn't have moved even around on the game board.
Yeah. So how far did you get, or how long have you played, and do you think you'll play more?
Oh yeah, I'll probably play more. I don't know how helpful it will be for fiction. I just don't know yet. I've only played about 3 hours, and I've only accomplished such a minimal amount. So like the first task in this game is to throw trash into a dumpster, which I found that I can't do it. I literally can't hit the dumpster. Luckily, I then was able to find my way into the gas station by tearing boards off, which was not so difficult. And then by watching many YouTube videos, figure out how to turn on the electricity and, get my email from my computer in the gas station and stuff like that. It would be more challenging if I didn't use YouTube videos, but I thought then it would take me like 25 hours just to even
there's
do
no
the
need
first
to.
steps.
I mean, again, there's no virtue or purity to this. This is, we're trying to do quick and dirty hacks to figure out how to do stuff and make stuff work.
Yeah.
But I would love to do a stream on Neophyte of you playing Gas Station Simulator, because
it would be better if I could get a few of my old book club members, old ladies. We could all play it. First, I'd have to talk them into it.
I think it would be a really popular stream, and even if it were not, I would be really happy to watch it. I mean, and as Bryce knows well, and so does Matt. Like, I'm terrible at these games. Because I've never cared enough to try to develop any skill at them. Because all I like is the design. Like, they're never telling a story I'm particularly interested in. Because I'm a really good storyteller. So being told a graphic story by someone who's not nearly as good a storyteller as I am it's kind of a busman's holiday. You know what I mean? So it's one of the reasons I like simulators rather than stories, is because I'm doing tasks, and I can make up my own story about why I'm doing those tasks, and I can make up my own goals, because they're always like, build 7 of this. I'm like, fuck you. Like, why would I do that? I don't like, if I want 7 of them, I will. But anyway, so yeah, I don't, believe me, you and I are in the same boat. Like, I am technically terrible at playing games.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter. So, okay, well, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I too look at the gas station simulator, mainly because most of you don't know, I worked at a full station gas station before I came here. So I lost my mind there and found character inspiration there too. So I made it work. So I looked at it, I read the reviews too, and a lot of people enjoyed the aspect of working and rebuilding the gas station. And I changed my mind. I didn't want to paint walls or move debris, so I just skipped it. And I know that I like survival shows, so I looked up survival games for free, and they had a few, but it looked like it would give me motion sickness just by watching some of the demo videos. So I settled with Atomic Fishing, which is just a post-apocalyptic world, and I'm just fishing in a nuclear waste pond and gathering fish. I can show you guys.
Yeah,
I didn't
please.
do
I would
too
love to see
much.
this.
I wasn't that good of a student, but I did. I fished for a little bit, and I caught a few fishes.
Fishing is a weirdly, I mean, one of my favorite things is fishing in VR with my friends in South Korea. Like, I love that. Les and I were fishing last week.
So I'll play this little video for you guys. Okay, so as you can see, you're literally fishing, you're casting, and you're catching fish. It doesn't come immediately. You have to wait a little bit or move where you cast, and then you'll catch a fish. But it was pretty cool so far. I'm still learning the controls, and that's as far as I got.
Okay, great. But I mean, these are both, right? Like, I mean, it's interesting that, for instance, gas station simulator. If you told somebody that was your idea, like, I'm going to make a game, I'm learning how to use Unity, and I'm going to make a game called Gas Station Simulator, like, no one would encourage you or finance that, right? Like, oh, I'm going to build a simulator where you're fishing, but it's after the apocalypse, right? Like, it gives you a sense, right, of how idiosyncratic these things are. And yet, I don't know how popular the atom fishing is, but fishing games are hugely popular. And the gas station simulator game just captured something somehow, and it was for a time the best-selling game on Steam, I think, which means they have made a lot of money from it. So it's not what people think it is. And for those of you who don't game, I guess that's what I would say is, like, it's really it's not what everybody thinks it is. Okay, we're coming up on the end, but we've got time for maybe one more.
I'll go if nobody else is
Sure. Well,
going
you don't
to.
have to. It doesn't have to be in the absence of anybody else, Jody.
No, I know, but like, I don't know. I'm a little more comfortable with public speaking, so I always kind of feel that silence when somebody doesn't, and
So
Anyway, I've been
you
playing.
want someone who feels uncomfortable doing this to do it.
Well, I mean, it feels
And somebody who's
monopolizing if
probably
you
not
are
even
comfortable.
very good at it. Yeah. You want
Yeah.
someone dull and uncomfortable to precede you. Okay. I mean, that's a
Okay.
good idea. Like, you really want someone dull and uncomfortable to precede you in a reading, because then everybody's like, thank Christ that's over. And hey, this guy's not so bad.
I came at this kind of from the perspective of I've been playing simulation type games like tycoon games and things like that for
Mhm.
pretty much as long as they've been around. Like Fish Tycoon was by far one of my favorite tycoon games, and you just bred fish and like in real time you needed to feed them or they would die, and really traumatic things. And what I've found, especially during the pandemic and anytime I'm stressed, really, I play survival games. And so I joke about it all the time that I'm sure there's a thesis in there somewhere that like in the worst times, like you play games about survival. Um, but what I chose this week was Cooking Simulator because even I'm reading what Catherine said. Yeah, yeah, there is there's just this neurotic. It's not surprising that my dreams are exactly the same way. Um, I tend to be really drawn to cooking games because as far as like phone games, they've always been not super detailed, but when they are on something like PlayStation or probably even Steam, they tend to be so literal. And then I think that's the thing with simulation games. There has to be this accessibility that doesn't feel like every single motion that you're doing is something that you actively have to like, I need to push this button and like, scroll back from this and move just to touch this. There needs to be a little bit of like wiggle room on that. And I've mentioned before that I'm in a video games course right now on the art and history and culture, and it's been really interesting to watch as we've been learning about video games like for the last 40 years or so, how they things that they expected the player to know how to do and navigate, and the world that they're in, and just how they would navigate that world and things like that. And I think a lot of simulators um, kind of are guilty of that. They just like they really don't know how people game. It's just like, oh, well, you're gonna cut up this tomato and like you're gonna like go over here with the knife and like make sure like just place it just so on the counter. And a lot of things get really technical. Um, and so I don't know if you've played this one or not, Pinckney, but in Dreams there was a game called Southpaw Kitchen or something like that.
Oh yeah, no, I remember that
Remember,
from the early
and
days.
literally throughout this entire game, I know we're running short on time. Um, you only have your left hand to try to cook things with. And somebody made up this game, like created it from scratch. And like you can't, you're doing it one handed. So everything you're doing, you're like continually like hitting the skillet and the meat is flying out. And if you hit the counter or the shelf just right, then the radio drops off the shelf and music starts playing like super frantically. And you never get anywhere in this game. And like I feel like it was probably somebody that took Cooking Simulator and went like, okay, let's make this as ridiculous as possible.
You should try. I'd be interested to hear your take on Cooking Simulator VR.
Yeah, like I said, that I did
We've
Cooking
got it
Simulator.
in the
This was for
lab, so
PlayStation.
yeah, come to the lab sometime and play Cooking Simulator VR, and
I
tell me
will
what
be
you
down
think.
for that. And I was amazed also by how many farming simulators are out there. I downloaded one in the past. There's like 35 or something ridiculous.
And they are very deep. Like Farming Simulator 22 has so much like contemporary equipment and
I
you
couldn't
know
drive the thresher, and this was in like the basic farming simulator. So
yeah, no, I mean it's really astonishing the depth to which some of these simulators go. Okay, well it's time. So we will get back to this discussion next week. We will start. Amy Etchison from SIU Press is gonna visit us, and you and I talked about her, Salam, and so. So we'll start by doing that, and I think we've picked a couple of the voices. We've been in touch. The company we're probably going to go with is Speech Key, SPECC, and I will send out links to a couple of audio pieces they sent us. That we sent them manuscripts, and they sent us like 15-minute excerpts. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But the idea, I think, is that we're gonna they're kind of a full service company, but we talk to them about our mission, and what we're gonna do is get kind of the basic stuff from them, but we're gonna do the editing and the speech synthesis, markup language stuff, and things like that. So we will actually, they'll kind of do the grunt work, but then we'll do all the refining and, if we want to add music and stuff like that, to make it a more sophisticated product than they will turn out. So we'll be talking about that, and I'll be in touch with you about that over the next week. And we'll talk a little bit more about simulators, and I want to take some time to show you DAZ Studio. So if you haven't downloaded DAZ Studio, you might want to do that and even play around with it a little bit just to get a sense of how you manipulate the 3D space, because it's manipulating 3D objects in 2D, which is a skill in and of itself. Yes, I did, Jody, and I will hang on after we hang up, or after everybody goes to you, and I can talk about the history fair. So we're going to do that, a little figure posing and stuff like that. And you've already got your assignment for story time. So is that clear to everybody? Okay. All right. Very good. See you next week, if not before.